So if we can get on the screen the rules for the amendments tonight. Let's see. Let's get those up. And we'll see what pieces are missing in the rules. All right. So if you'll hit room on your, you should be able to see those. Can we zoom into the amendment process or debating amendments, the second? There we go. All right. Users should propose amendments by providing a general intent. So generally, we're going to vote on the intent. If an amendment has been moved and seconded, language can be amended by a majority vote. So feel free to make amendments to the intent. A motion can also include suggested language, but it's not required. And I would add it's probably not recommended, but it's up to you guys. A motion can also include specific zoning changes and map addresses, but it's not required. The commission can agree to add or drop the suggested language or map address, but we will not edit the suggested language. Either adopt it in whole or reject it in whole. Amendments from the working groups will be in this order. Let's talk about that order for a second. Is affordability ready to go first? Transition ready to go next? Residential?
Yes.
Non-residential? No. Downtown? No. And then process? Ready to go? Okay. So affordability, transition, residential, then process. Non-residential and downtown, we're going to wait until the 5th. The chair of each working group can submit motions for a set of amendments and then followed by a second on that package amendment. And then any commissioner can add or substitute or strike from the base motion. So you'll make an amendment to add or substitute or strike that the full body will vote on. You can also make an amendment to split the motion into smaller parts. After the chair of the working group is finished submitting all of the package amendments, then another member of the working group can submit motions related to that working group, whether it's transition or affordability and so on. Base motions that are within a scope of a working group that are made by commissioners that are not part of the working group will be handled in the round robin section. That one's a little confusing. Commissioner Thompson, did you want to clarify that?
Yeah, I guess I just, so if someone says as a base motion and they're residential, there's an amendment to change the impervious cover from 45 to 55. Any other commissioner can say, no, I want to strike that from 55 and make it 50. And then as long as the commission as a whole votes on that, that becomes the body of the motion. Anybody, any other commissioner can make sort of adjustments to the amendments that are already out there. But to bring in a topic that was not covered by the working group, that's within the scope of that working group, but not, there is no amendment out there that's kind of like that, that needs to be, you need to sort of save that until it's your individual time.
Perfect. Thank you. So those are the ones that are relevant to tonight. What's not on here is what we're going to do after an amendment is proposed, meaning how much time are we going to allow for you to present the motion, how much time to ask clarifying questions, and then how much time for opposition and those that are for to speak on that topic, just discussion. So the idea is to use our regular rules, and I will go over the regular rules, and then you guys can chime in to see if we want to change them. So the regular rules are after the motion is presented. To present a motion, you have 3 minutes. So just commentary on this, a package motion may take longer than 3 minutes. I'm just going to go over what the standard rules are. And then you have clarifying questions, up to 4 of them, that clarify the motion or package amendments that are made. And those are allowed 2 minutes to ask the question and 3 minutes to respond. Okay, so I'm going to stop there just to see if there are any questions about the timing to make the motion or the timing for asking clarifying questions and responding. Commissioner Kinney?
So I want to clarify that when you make a motion, what you're doing is you are reading your intent statement, amendment, or striking the substitute. You state your motion essentially without pitching it. You get a second, and then you get 3 minutes to explain it.
No, you would get 3 minutes altogether to state the motion and to be the first person speaking for it.
I ask that because I think that you should be required to get a second before you burn 3 minutes of time. So a lot of parliamentary procedure I've been a part of, I have a motion. My motion is this. Do we have a second? I have a second. Okay, speak to your motion. So you can't speak to your motion unless you have a second.
Okay.
Which is my understanding of the standard Roberts
Fair enough.
configuration. Okay. And then if we are giving questioners 5 minutes on the main motions, but speakers only 3 and 2, can we just ask restraint in the commission from people burning question time? Because there might be commissioners who really want to ask questions, and there's staff here who can speak very importantly to things about it and not burn those as comment times, but really save them for questions.
Okay, I can look to make sure that there are questions. And the 5 minutes is question and answer, just to clarify. The question and the response is a total of 5 minutes, just like always. So commissioners, just like always, ask staff to get to the point if you need to, and ask you can stop them and redirect and so on. Redirect to a different person if you need to. You have 5 minutes. Any other comments, Commissioner Kinney?
No.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So if the motion maker is part of a working group and there's additional clarifications from the other commissioners, if we're allotted that 3 minutes, can those other commissioners chime in as long as it's within that presentation of that?
Yeah.
Okay. As long as it's all within that 3 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, you can help with the motion.
Okay.
Is everyone okay with the 3 minutes? Even if it's a package amendment?
So I just want to make sure that we're saying this is that the actual stating of the motion, so if I'm going to read the intent on 10 amendments, that the time has not started until I've stated the motion, read the intent, someone seconds it, that's the motion, and then I get 3 minutes to say why I picked those 10 amendments.
Yes.
Yes, I think that's fine. I would wonder if we should up the number of questions, because 4 questions, if I've got 10 amendments in a package from a working group, maybe that's not enough, and so maybe we should say, limit the number of questions per amendment, but not per the package.
But couldn't it be up to the chair to also break it apart and have 2 different packages or 3 different packages? Because it's per amendment, right?
I think it's not up to the chair. I think it's up
No.
to the body as a whole. We can vote to split. But
Okay.
So let's go through this, and then we'll take this as a base motion, and then you can present that as an amendment, Commissioner Thompson. Suggest a higher number of questions. Any comments on? So that was through the questions. So now let's go to. So remember, these are clarifying questions. So then you go to the round robin, which is up to 8 commissioners, which is not listed on here. So did we agree to this, Andrew? Is this a modified version of our rules?
Chair Commissioner Liaison Andrew Rivera. So currently you have your round robin at the beginning of a motion, but perhaps you would want to do a motion because you would, if we could step back, you would have your public hearing, then your round robin, and then a motion, and then your 4 questions. So perhaps you would want to have your motion a round robin, a reduced round robin, and then Q&A after that.
Okay. So, commissioners, do you see the distinction? Typically, we have a public hearing, and then we have a round robin. And then we have a motion, and then we have clarifying questions. So we get 8 after the hearing and 4 after the motion. Yeah? In this case, we're going to have a motion, and then the paper in front of you shows 4 questions, but typically we would have 8 if this were a public hearing. Commissioner Thompson?
I think typically the 8 at 5 minutes is to sort of question the people who were presenting in the public hearing.
Yes.
And most of that 170 plus people are no longer here. So I would think that who were we going to question? So if we,
No, I'm just suggesting,
Yeah,
do we need the 8?
so I'm suggesting we don't need the 8.
We don't need the 8, even though you suggested we need more questions.
Right.
Okay. You just need more than 4, not 8.
I mean, if we are going to move to adopt these rules, I'd be interested. I would make that motion, except maybe I would say that after the 4 questions at 5 minutes, a commissioner could continue to ask questions as long as they were on an amendment that hadn't had any questions against it yet, any clarifying questions against it. So if I've got 10 amendments in my package and the 4 questions have already been asked, but there's another amendment that no one's asked a question on.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to move this along here. Main motion maker gets 3 minutes to speak. After they present the motion, that's when their time starts. And then the primary commissioner against gets 3 minutes. And then everyone after that, for and against, get 2 minutes each. Any questions about that? So the first 2 that speak for, or the first 2 that speak for and against get 3 minutes each. And then everyone that follows gets 2 minutes each.
Yes, I wonder if it makes sense to, as I read the rules for debating amendments that we posted, it says the chair of each working group can submit motions, plural, for a set of amendments to the LDC draft with a second. Can I suggest that we interpret that to allow the chair of each working group to have discretion in grouping amendments together, and so they might come with 2 or 3 or 4 different base motions?
Yeah, the idea is to have multiple package amendments, yes.
Okay.
Any thoughts on 3 minutes and 2 minutes? Okay, and then finally, what's in front of you is if there's an amendment to a motion, then the times are reduced. So the motioner gets 2 minutes, then you have questions that are 4 questions, same 4 questions, but this time you have 3 minutes. Members speaking for and against, their times are reduced as well. Any thoughts on the bottom half of this sheet? Commissioner Azar?
Can I suggest that here we add maybe a minute to respond to the motioner of the amendment? So the primary motioner of the base motion can respond. Does that make sense? So once the amendment motioner has made a motion, the primary base motioner can respond, maybe take a minute to do that. So that person then doesn't take up the questions or the other 3 spots.
To respond to the motion?
To the amendment motion.
To the amendment motion.
So if the base motion person says, I want to respond to the amendment motion to say, yes, we looked at it, blah, 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 then we should be able to respond to it. And the person might just say, I don't have anything to say, let's go on.
Okay, so you're treating that amendment motion as if it were a question to the main motion and asking for a response. Something like that.
What if-
Asking for their read on the amendment.
Yes. Essentially to say if somebody brings a motion that we've either thought of and there's a reason why that should not be considered, perhaps we can just clarify it up front. And if that person says, okay, I hear you, I'm just going to pull my amendment. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I think we should just leave it as a question, though.
Yeah, and we could generally yield to the chair of the working group to have the first question, which would enable them to have a bit of a back and forth.
Yeah, I like it. Any other thoughts? If not, is there?
Just
Yeah.
the idea that, of course, these time limits can be changed on a particular item by a vote of the majority of the commission. Two-thirds to limit debate, right? Yeah, two-thirds.
All right. Is there a base? If there's no other discussion, is there a base motion accepting these? Okay, motion by Commissioner Kenny, second by Commissioner Azar. Any discussion? Any questions to the motion makers? We just talked about it, so no questions. Any amendments? Commissioner Thompson, did you want to increase the number of questions after the main
Yes.
motion?
I would think after the main motion, you could continue to ask questions about a package of amendments as long as none of the questions, were to that particular amendment.
Okay. And is there a limit on that?
Well, limited by how many motions you do in the package. If you're
Oh.
downtown, it can be quite some time.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Clarifying question. Is there any limit to the quote package? Any minimum, any maximum?
Okay, let me get a second first. Is there a second? Okay, second by Azar. Is there a limit?
Okay, so we're talking about our package of amendments. Is there any minimum, say you have to have 3, or your maximum is 10? Are there any parameters around those?
No minimum, I would think. I think there are many amendments that have consensus from the working group or working groups. Can the working groups just share what their biggest package might be? Is it 10? Is it 20? Is it 5?
13.
We haven't talked about it.
For residential, actually, all the amendments that we have in our package here are consensus. So,
No.
I beg to differ. We have not taken a final vote on everything that's been submitted. We need to have another meeting. That's why I sent out the doodle poll. Is there anyone else on residential that agrees with that?
right, but isn't everything that we have on here already
But some
consensus?
of them
Some of them
have
are new.
changed
Some of
and
them,
new.
I mean, there's a couple I have questions on that. I think most of them are ones
Yeah.
that we discussed, but there's some ones that I'm like,
There was-
I don't know what
I
that
don't
is.
I will say there was one that was included by mistake. I asked for it to be removed. It wasn't. And then I thought I had moved all the new ones over to a different sheet and that these are just the ones that we discussed. But I can tell you what,
5 or 10?
it's most of them, and I will ask the members to send me, to let me know in a minute which ones they want to
Right.
pull from the consensus group.
Okay.
How many are those, though? Is
Probably
it
just a few.
few?
Right,
Okay.
it would just be a few.
We have 4 that I think we'll go through
4.
together.
So your maximum
4
is
out of
4?
13,
Okay.
yes.
And then Commissioner Kenny, can you just give me a rough idea of how many? Is it 20 or?
Probably, there are 29 total. I bet 24.
Okay. Commissioner
Chair-
Seeger, do you have?
Chair, I'm sorry, but we do I look through the residential, I mean, I have questions. There's a number of those I just don't understand.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Seeger, that's a good question. So maybe we should have a max so that we're not buried under a large package of amendments. Commissioner Seeger, are you suggesting a max?
Let's put a max at 10 and try to keep it under 10. I know that's going to be difficult for some groups, but if we could get the very high level, I would feel more comfortable on that.
Okay.
The other question, so would we have a recess, like a 10-minute recess that we could go through? Because I see ones that I think for the residential work group, I know that we could probably put 2 packages through,
We can do that.
and then that would really help us even up here, because I think there's a lot of consensus and there's just a few that's eyeball.
So with that in mind, I'm going to keep this moving. So that's an amendment by Commissioner Seeger. Is there a second to that amendment? Second by Commissioner Hempel. Any further discussion or questions? So this is an amendment to Commissioner Thompson amendment, which is to reduce the number, or to have a maximum of 10
Yes.
in the package. Okay, everyone clear on that? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, so that motion carries unanimously. Back to Commissioner Thompson's amendment. Remind me again what that was.
After you've done the 4 questions, as long as you're asking questions to an amendment that hasn't had any questions against it, you can continue to ask questions
Okay,
at whatever the 2 minutes are.
okay. And the second on that was Kenny or Azar? That was Azar. Okay. So my only comment on that would be, I still feel like we should have a max. Otherwise, we're going to go, if there's 10 amendments, can we have a max of 10?
Sure.
Okay. And so that's my amendment. Is there a second to my amendment? Is there further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Now back to Commissioner Thompson's motion, seconded by Commissioner Azar, to have a maximum questions of 10, but after 4, it has to be to an amendment that hasn't had a question on it. Is that clear to everyone? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously, and now we're back to the base motion. Remind me again who the first and second were? Okay. Commissioner Kinney and it wasn't was it Azar? Okay. Were you the second on the original motion? Okay, thank you. All right. So that is just to pass the rules with the 2 amendments or 3 amendments that we made. Are there any further questions? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Thank you, folks. I wasn't expecting that to take that long, but we have rules in place now. I know there's a desire for the working groups to take some time, but I've been advised to not do that so that we're not conducting business right here while we're on the dais or scurrying to the back somewhere as a working group. Any opposition to that, to just keep going? If not, we can talk about it.
Yeah, I think it would be more efficient if we could package, I don't know if other working groups would like to find a way to package, because now that we have set the rules of 10 per, I mean, we kind of need to go back and see what we can package and put together. I mean, otherwise we're just going to be up here going back and forth.
A maximum of 10, yes. So let me ask you, affordability transition residential, and then process. 10 minutes would be enough for the chairs to get the packages together? And Andrew, can you chime in on how strongly you disagree with this? With just the working groups?
The existing subcore of working groups?
Yeah, the working groups which have been meeting for the last month and a half.
Sure, it's probably preferred that the business take place on the dais.
Okay. Preferred? Commissioners? How important is it for you to? Go ahead, Commissioner Thompson.
I think I can package up the process working groups. I've just sort of went through and checked them into 2 separate packages to be under the max.
Okay.
And I would think that we could, if we couldn't, someone could propose something, a package, and if there were people on that working group who didn't support that being, if it's the residential and there were some that were not consensus or they wanted changes, that they could be brought up as amendments to the original motion.
Okay. Is affordability ready to package it?
I wonder.
If my working group members are fine with it, I can do it by myself, if they give me the authority.
Commissioner Shaw, are you guys transitioned?
Yeah, I only have one package and the others need to be individually
Individual,
addressed.
okay. So here's, why don't I do this? Why don't we keep going? We'll take a recess at, say, 7:30 or 8, and during the recess is not my business.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I wonder if the working groups would be amenable to maybe transitions going first. There was some stuff in there that I thought affordability kind of spoke to stuff in affordability.
Is there opposition to transitions going first?
Not to me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Could you speak to specifically why? Because I'm not sure that that's going to be advantageous.
There are some conflicts between affordability and transitions, and there's interplay between them, and I thought that the just in my mind when I was reading them, transitions made sense to do first, but if there's opposition, I'm fine.
Yeah, I think let's go with affordability because in my mind, they're going to help steer the transition. So if we vote on certain things that is important to them, it's going to change. It could change some of what we discuss on transition. So I'm thinking about it differently. I think they should go first.
All right, chicken and the egg. You guys just speak up when you see some conflict. All right. Okay. So with that, Commissioner Czar.
So I think just to explain, this is on me. We have a little bit of an issue here, but I'm going to keep it as it is. So our suggested text in some ways clarifies our intent. It's not necessarily intent. It's not text. It's more like direction. So I hope staff will take that as they go along with our intents. So I'm going to start reading my intents and then I'll make a motion so that I have my 3 minutes. So I'm looking at the first one, allow the management and monitoring of scattered site affordable units so that they can be made feasible. And I'll read the suggested text here so folks have some context. Create a certified affordable housing provider certification with community input at a later time based on certain criteria. If a developer builds less than 4 income-restricted affordable units, they must partner with this provider for resident income certification and placement. The management and maintenance of the units must remain the duty of the management of the market rate units. Essentially to say, I think we've heard some concern in saying that it might be hard to manage less than 4 units, so we're trying to counter that. And this was not something that we had shared in our intents before. The second one is consider income averaging within income-restricted units. 3 is the opportunities for income-restricted housing in high-opportunity areas needs to be maximized. I'm sorry, this is typos. Work with the transition zones working group to identify opportunities for increased transition zone capacity in high-opportunity areas to increase income-restricted affordable units by increasing bonus areas. So I think this might be something that Commissioner Kenny was mentioning. We'll work with the transition working group. Number 4 is ensure that and this is an intent that's broken up into 3 different intents, so I'll go over them. Ensure that the conditional use permit requirement for transitional and supportive housing is economically feasible in all zones. The way this is broken up is we're saying remove the CUP requirements for supportive housing in all zones, so that would be gone now. Review the allowability of the CUP requirement for transitional housing under the Fair Housing Act, because I think there's some concern that actually it might not meet fair housing requirements. And then lastly, to ensure that the CUP requirements for transitional and supportive housing, to ensure that there is no economic cost or time delay associated with the CUP requirement for transitional housing. So if it's allowed by fair housing, we'll move ahead with it, but with the requirement that it not cause time delays or economic hardship. So I'm going to stop here at essentially 6, and I'll bundle the rest of them separately. So this is going to be my first motion. I make a motion to go from 1 to 6 with a number of intents and some direction within them.
Is the motion voting on the intent only?
I would say voting on the intent with our direction within the suggested text column.
So both.
Clarify. Okay.
So let me get a second. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Hempel. Okay, go ahead and speak to your motion.
I'm just going to quickly say, I feel like, so the first 2 motions I'm going to make, these were unanimous within our working group. These are including the suggested text, so not just the intent, but the suggested text as well. This was agreeable to everyone within our commission, in our working group. I'm just gonna.
All right. Questions?
This is questions to the whole, so this is our Q&A time.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got 5 minutes. I can start with some questions. So Commissioner Azar, your suggested text for number 3 doesn't seem like it's directed to staff.
I hear that. Can I change my base motion and say I'm taking that out? If that's acceptable to my second? So the suggested text for number 3 is gone.
Yeah, let's just make a new motion without that.
You want me to? Okay, so I'll make a new motion for intent 1 to 6 to move forward with the suggested text to move for 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Commissioner Hempel. All right, second. Okay. Questions? Commissioner Seeger?
I have a question on, I like the idea of the third-party certification so that we could get those small additional units. Was there any discussion on how that company would be chosen? Are you proposing maybe that staff put out an RFP and it goes through the whole procurement process?
So I wouldn't say that they would have to go through a procurement process because staff would not be hiring them. They would have to go through a certification with NHCD. So NHCD would do a certification, and then the developer would actually then be working with them in partnership. So NHCD is not the one who's going to be doing that payment, except we'll have to figure out how the certification program itself gets set up and funded.
Right, and this takes the burden off of NHCD except for choosing that third party.
And for setting up a certification
And
process,
them creating the process. Thank
which
you.
will have some time and cost associated with it for the department.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Azar, just clarify, none of this is part of the motion? This,
Yes.
Okay.
This is just a conversation.
all right, Commissioner Schneider?
Thanks for pulling these together. Question on the supportive housing amendments in this motion. Can you just talk a little bit about what the process is now? Does it vary by zone, current zoning, and what is the change that this is making?
So staff, please correct me if I'm wrong. I would look to staff to provide a complete clarity. My understanding is currently there is no CUP for either one of those. So that's a change. And supportive housing essentially is, there's no time limit on supportive housing. So it's essentially anyone within the market who can get in on a unit. It has more to do with the funding stream rather than where folks live. That's my understanding, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong.
And can you just clarify what you mean by supportive housing?
So supportive housing, at least as defined here, would be permanent supportive housing, essentially folks who require housing, some degree of housing placement over a long term. There's no time limit on it. It can go on until you decide to move out or until you lose eligibility. And it usually it comes with some degree of wraparound services. Essentially, there's some services that are provided off-site as well. So that's supportive. Transitional, and I honestly do not remember off the top of my head what the time limit is, but it's essentially 2 to 3 years that you get to live within a unit that it's funded for afterwards, and during that time, somebody's working with you to move you over to permanent housing that's market essentially, or into permanent supportive housing. So that's how transitional works. So that's why we've broken it up. Supportive housing essentially being, it's just housing like anything else, just your funding is coming from somewhere else. I don't see why that should have another aspect associated towards in terms of land use. Transitional housing, because of its somewhat temporary nature, we're breaking it out as separate, but with the understanding if fair housing allows us to do that. And staff, I'm sorry if I've taken up your time.
And these are all designed to support or to address problems of people or families who are having problems maintaining their homes or are homeless and are trying to get back into to a more of a permanent home, whether it be economic or a health issue or something like that.
Yes, and I think just to clarify on that, I don't know what you meant by the word design. So they're not necessarily, it's essentially you have funding and then you work with a market housing provider to essentially place someone within their unit. Currently these units could be anywhere that are market or or affordable housing, I should say.
Commissioner Schneider, did you have a comment for, question for staff as well? No.
I'm sorry, I'll just quickly say, staff, does that sound correct? If I've misrepresented something, please clarify that.
Staff, is that correct?
Lindy Garwood, Planning and Zoning. We're double checking, but I do believe that transitional supportive housing is a CUP in all zones in today's code, and it would be permitted by right in MU5B, but a CUP in the proposed code as it stands by staff recommendation.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Shaw, then Hempel.
So the proposal is to remove the CUP. Are you proposing MUP or P? What do you want to move to?
For permanent supportive, we're saying nothing. So no MUP, CUP, or P. And then for transitional housing, we're saying that the CUP stay, but we make sure that we're not charging somebody a fee for filing it. There's not an unnecessary delay associated with it. We're asking folks to house people who are essentially experiencing homelessness, and we want to make this the easiest and most financially feasible possible. We cannot be burdening folks who are agreeing to do transitional housing.
Sure. So that would be, I'm looking at the zoning table. So everywhere we have a CUP would now be permitted by right, or P.
Yes, for permanent supportive. So we're breaking up these two. Currently, it's permanent supportive and transitional within all the tables.
Commissioner Hempel.
There's a lot of good work that went into this. Appreciate the working group. My question is on the first amendment about the 4 income restricted affordable units, partnering with a provider that would help manage that. How did you all determine that number 4? It seems like that could be even maybe a little bit higher.
So I guess at least for those, particularly, I think what we heard from staff was managing those 1 to 3 is hard. Even though currently in some places we have those, we're trying to figure out a way to do that in a reasonable way. I can honestly say that I think we'd be open to someone making an amendment and changing that number. I don't think the working group was particularly vetted to this number, but we're essentially saying for anything that's small scale, rather than going through sort of this scattered management, we would try to find a way to do it in a much more cohesive way. But yes, if you want to offer an amendment or anybody wants to offer an amendment, I don't see that we would disagree with that.
Any other questions or amendments? Commissioner Thompson.
So I mean, just want to clarify that the text of the amendments that you are offering just say remove the CUP. It doesn't actually say replace it with what. So I'm assuming that if staff felt that an MUP was more appropriate than a P, according to what the text of what we're getting ready to vote on says, that would be appropriate for them to do.
I guess let me clarify. We're saying remove CUP and put nothing in its place for supportive housing. And from my understanding, that is what currently happens with permanent supportive, and somebody can correct me. So we're essentially saying keep it to what it is today. But if staff comes back and says that is completely unreasonable and there's something that we're missing, then that's something we can think of. And I think Yanis Polito wants to say something.
Well, we also discussed the economic burden of the conditional use permit costing around $20,000. So we also had discussed fee waiver in our working group as opposed to just completely eliminating the conditional use permit altogether. So that may be a consideration that we want to leave to staff. We also don't want to hold up transitional or supportive housing with the permitting process itself. But if the economic burden is the greater burden, then the intent there was also to consider just a fee waiver.
Chair, if I want to amend my base motion, I have to remake the motion.
I'd prefer someone else to make the amendment.
So I would be open I think if there's a lot of concern and we're trying to figure this out, I think unless folks disagree with me from the working group, we can take out the direction suggested text part for everything that is associated with the CUP for transitional and supportive housing. If that makes it easier for folks to go along with.
I think just as a parliamentary matter, I think you want to just, so we're not having the chair editing on the dais willy-nilly, somebody could make that motion.
Yeah, so I'm asking,
Okay.
will someone do it?
I move that we remove the suggested text and just vote on the intent on these amendments.
That's for all of them. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Shea.
I'm sorry, well, let me clarify. 3, just those 3 or all?
All of them.
1 through 6, right?
That's what the amendment was, but you can.
Well, can you specify
Okay, so
4?
Just the ones that had to do with the supportive.
Thank you. So 4 to 6. We're taking the intent out for 4 to 6. Oh, sorry, taking out the suggested text. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, is that your motion, Commissioner Thompson?
Yes.
Second by Commissioner Shea. Is there any clarifying questions? Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, so the amendment passes. Now we're back to the original motion. Any other questions? Okay, so we have a base motion by Azar, second by Hempel. Okay, any more questions on the base motion?
Base motion clarification. It is 1, 2, 4, 5, 6 that we are now voting on.
No, we're voting on all of them, but the suggested text has been removed from 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, so you're, okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, let's take a vote.
Chair, Commissioner Liaison Henry, did you include amendment number 3? I thought amendment number 3 was deleted.
Just the suggested text was deleted.
Yeah, 3. The suggested text for 3 was taken out in the base motion. I restated the base motion.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying.
So, Chair, now 3 is in. Can I ask a question of the chair how it might affect transition? Yeah. Okay. What would you recommend in the opportunities for income restricted housing in high opportunity areas needs to be maximized? We're speaking, I think, about generally and in transition areas, but generally in high opportunity areas. What things would you think would be prudent to do in transition areas?
So what we had here in the suggested text was, and to take this as direction, I'm sorry, let me read this out. Work with the transition zones working group to identify opportunities for increased transition zone capacity in high opportunity areas, to increase income restricted affordable units by increasing bonus area. And this in some ways was responding to the work that the transition working group has already been doing. So we're just saying we do want to work with you on that to increase those units. And I think there's been some conversation about finding a way to increase the bonus or find different zones. We're going to defer to you all, frankly, in terms of what that looks like.
Okay. So I think we have some things that I don't think there's conflict. I think we have things to offer here. So I'm feeling good that we can speak to that, how we'll address this motion or this amendment. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Let's take a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. All right. Next package, Commissioner Azar.
So I'm going to read through 7 down to 13. And for some of these, I will say, please look at the direction. For some of them, I won't. But essentially, so we're looking at number 7 now. The intent is for all affordable housing bonus program units require tenant protection similar to what is currently required in the rental housing development assistance lease addendum. And this is the same for 7 and 8. The intent is the same, and we hope that staff will take that with the direction that we have given in the suggested text. We took that largely from Affordability Unlocked, so we would want something mapping what Affordability Unlocked currently has. And we're also clarifying in that second suggested text, number 8, to say essentially that we also try to put that in places that are not going to be edited. So, for example, Uno, Downtown, Rainy, also our regulating plans, which we know we will be revising. So hopefully we can have tenant protections in those as well, just to have a similar idea across the board. Coming to number 9, the intent here is offer an unlimited bonus in the CC zone to increase community benefits, including affordable housing. This had passed on unanimously again. I should say, by the way, everything in here has passed unanimously. So this one, we had suggested working with downtown. Downtown, we can talk about what that looks like. And I think you all are already bringing that up. So we're just passing that along and saying we support, I think, the work that you all
Commissioner
are.
Azar?
Yes.
So when you're reading through these, if you could say if your motion includes both the intent and the language, and then just read it. Commentary, you're going to have to use the 3 minutes.
Okay, that sounds good. So I am reading just the intent for 7, just the intent for 8, just the intent for 9. I'm coming to just the intent for 10 and say relax permitting requirements for internal ADUs. I'm going to just the intent for 11, say encourage accessible childcare by reducing restrictions on childcare facilities for 25 children or fewer, including Montessori schools in all zoning categories except industrial and airport zones. And then I am reading in the intent of number 13, encourage accessible elder care by reducing restrictions on elder care facilities, including occupancy limits in all zoning categories except industrial and airport zones. And so I'm making a motion to have the intent for 7, for the intent for 9, the intent for 10, the intent for 11, and the intent for 13 to move forward as a motion.
But not 8.
8 and 12 are repetitive,
Okay.
so the intent doesn't change.
Okay, and we're going up to 13, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
So every unique intent from 7 to 13.
Okay. And no suggested language. Those are just notes for staff to look at.
Yes.
Okay. All right, commissioners. We've got a motion by Commissioner Azar. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Yanis Pulido. Go ahead, Commissioner Azar.
So quickly, I think thank you for clarifying that I'm learning and going through these as we go along to figure out what's happening. So essentially, yes, for intent number 7, intent number 8, I've already spoken. Intent number 9 will work with the downtown working group. Intent number 11 and 12, we saw that there currently is a CUP that is required for facilities that are considered large, 13 to 24. That's something staff can consider and look at and what that looks like. In terms of the residential zones, in other places, not so much. And similarly for 13, we're looking at some of the off-street parking requirements for accessible elder care, which right now seem a little excessive as we're working with folks. So yeah. And again, these are all amendments, intents, and suggested texts that were unanimous within our group.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Azar.
Sure.
Yes.
I have an amendment, and I think this is an appropriate time to offer it.
Yeah.
I'd like to, since we are not amending suggested text, and you are not offering suggested text for any of these, right? I'd like to replace 25 with 35 in the child care numbers there. So that's for 11 and 12.
Okay. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Hempel. Commissioner Kinney, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, just we talked about this with some stakeholders, and then just my own personal. I have a lot of experience with daycare right now and what their impacts are like. I live next door to one, and 35 is, I think, just includes a little some more child cares under that umbrella without at all getting into the realm of like campuses and buses and stuff like that. So I think that if we can increase that number, that just makes it more feasible, and it's a very much within the realm of reasonability, I think.
Okay. Questions? Commissioner Yanis Pulido, then Shaw.
Commissioner Kenny, do you live near a childcare facility with 35?
I have a playscape that is maybe not code compliant within 10 feet of my bedroom window, yes.
Oh, okay, of the childcare center.
Yes.
Okay, definitely inclined to support this just to make early childhood care more accessible. My only concern with the numbers was really getting around when you have a facility that's too small to offer a bus, but you have as many as, maybe 36 kids or just around there, the pickup and drop off aspect and just the impact that has on a neighborhood. And so I just was hoping you could elaborate a little bit.
Sure. I'll elaborate that it's daycare pickup and drop off is a little more spread out than normal school because not everybody drops their kid off at the same time. We are only talking about daycares. We're not talking about schools, as well as any parking problems that do occur, or for like an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, maybe. It's just something that I think the urban fabric can handle without requiring a parking lot.
Commissioner Seeger.
Question.
Actually, I had Commissioner Shaw first, and then Seeger.
Okay.
So I would like staff to maybe discuss with us what's in current code, and I believe there's already been an increase to this draft, and then why those levels were set the way they were for the child care numbers between the different tiers.
Yeah, I would encourage commissioners to ask staff because they're here, and staff, if it's not easy to answer, that's okay too.
Hello, Commissioners, Planning and Zoning, Lindy Garwood. In today's code, 6 and under is the smallest level that's allowed in residential zones. I believe up to 12 or 13. I would need to get my actual code to give you the exact numbers, but 12 or 13 is that middle zone, and then greater than that is the commercial zone. In this proposal, we're recommending less than 12 be allowed in residential house scale by right and also be an accessory use to a dwelling unit, so you don't have to do a change of use to do a child care. That number was upped because the state level for home use is 12 and under children. So that kind of was like what the state home care allowed, so we wanted to match that level. And then we increased that middle zone that starts at RM to allow 13 to 24, just to kind of create that spread for that middle zone. It starts in RM and goes up. And then commercial starts at 25, and it's allowed in the mixed use zones and greater.
So that kind of begs...
Sorry. The middle one in today's code is 6 to 20. So thank you, Donna.
So that just kind of begs that you said state law. So should we not... do we need to comply with that law how does that affect daycares and where they're located?
So it's within your purview to go beyond the state law. The difference is that after 12, you have to have the requirements of a commercial facility under state law, which have different open space requirements and other regulatory proceedings for that, versus home care can be done with less regulation from the state. So.
Thank you.
Did you want to direct a portion of that to Kenny to see how he envisions that happening? In residential zones?
So I brought it up because this was something we were going to bring up in non-residential, but since we're only voting on things once, I want to do it here. As staff just outlined, there's 3 categories, and the smallest one is the only one that lines up with state licensing. The other 2, staff just picked a number to differentiate medium from large, and if it's a CUP for sure, if it's an accessory use for sure, but even if it's an MUP, it's still going to be quite a big regulatory burden there just from a permitting perspective, let alone all the licensing you have to get from the state. And so I just wanted to shift that a little bit higher because I could easily see 35 kids on like on a big suburban house. That would be a big house, but yes.
Okay. Commissioner Seeger?
Thank you, Commissioner Shaw, for asking the first point of my question, and it's government rules. Are we running up against any? But also, you're talking about schools or childcare But in your motion, or in the motion, it says Montessori schools. Are you also including schools in this, and do they have different regulatory requirements?
Do you want to direct that to staff? In terms
So
of maybe the definition of
so
childcare?
schools are separate. And I think I'm sorry, did we write Montessori schools? Because that's not.
Oh, you did on
No,
two of them.
we did specifically because in the working, sorry.
Yeah, well, no, I was just going to say, I feel like we wrote Montessori child care facilities because that's a concern that came out, not necessarily a school, but. So.
Montessori schools are schools, but they are not considered, they're not, this came up because in our working group session, it was brought up that Montessoris they're basically excluded by this. So this was a way of including Montessoris as well as childcare facilities that are not schools.
Yeah.
But we also considered eliminating the language because we didn't only want to make it Montessori. So I think our intent was to say other childcare facilities.
So our suggested text actually had it because I've taken out the suggested text, so that's what it is. Commissioner Yanis Belida, do you want to make an amendment and say that we're saying Montessori and other childcare facilities, or does somebody want to do that?
Yeah, let's do that after this amendment.
Oh, sorry.
So right now I've got Kenny's amendment. Any other questions on Kenny's amendment, raising 25 to 35? Commissioner Thompson.
Well, I just have a question from staff of what is a school versus a daycare as a use?
Don't take a seat yet, Brent.
Brent Lloyd with the LDC team. What I was.
What is a school versus a daycare in
So it has to do, and I think, with the number of kids and the grade level. And we would encourage you to not focus on the type of educational program in your language. So we would recommend not focusing on whether it's Montessori or not, but just focusing on the grade level and the number of kids attending. The state regulations operate separately from our code, so I think, stay focused on our regulations. And additionally, just by way of context, there was a prior council resolution, which I do not have in front of me, in 2019, that encouraged making it easier to have childcare, and I can't quote the exact language. But I think some of the some of the changes that you see before you today in the draft code were done with an eye towards that resolution.
I guess I would, maybe we vote on this amendment first, but then maybe I would offer another one to just sort of broaden the language to educational, child care or educational facilities.
Can I just give one clarification? So just a reminder that the suggested text is not part of the base motion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions to Kenny's amendment, Commissioner Hempel?
More of just a clarification, maybe a question, but when you say that there's 25 or 35 children that's enrolled, they're not all necessarily going there at the same time or on the same day, correct? So that could be a significantly less amount of children at the facility on any given day just because they don't all go at the same time.
Correct. That would be my understanding. That is, I think, what we were thinking of. But can there be a time when all 25 are there? I'm assuming yes.
Chair, I'm just recognizing our ex officio.
Commissioner Leighton Burwell, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And this may be a question for the maker of the amending motion, but one of the reasons that things like daycare of a particular size are included in CUPs is for health, safety, and welfare. And for instance, under current code, a daycare was just permitted on Koenig Lane mid-block with no parking. So my question is, are we looking at these things in a context sensitive manner, or are we just saying, yeah, it's fine wherever it goes, let the free market determine whether or not children are at risk or not. I believe that the Land Development Code is a regulatory thing for health, safety, and welfare. And I'm just wondering how you make that leap.
Yeah, well, first of all, there's a fairly onerous and rigorous state regime for licensing daycares that deals with health, safety, and welfare. And certainly there will be competing priorities, such as should we make that daycare on Koenig, make their childcare much more expensive to get parking, or can we have people figure it out? And I think the intent here is that I think we've actually had a case before us, and I've heard from some other cases where they weren't able to make a parking lot work on their site. And there's actually, fittingly enough, a Montessori daycare in my neighborhood that probably has about 35 kids in it, no parking lot. And everybody does just fine. So yes, this is certainly a choice between making sure that everyone has required parking and making childcare less expensive.
Any other questions, Commissioner Shea?
So I have similar concerns. To circumvent some type of permitting process, whether it be a CUP or MUP, those are the, per code, that's where we are able to, or staff is able to tweak the requirements of what's needed to help make it work, to make it more, to allow it to blend better with that area. It could be, whether it be parking or at least a traffic mitigation, some type of plan of where people park or walk or whatever. That gives that ability to coordinate and work that out. And ultimately, I think it's the safety of the kids and the parents who are walking over there. I know the state regulations, a lot of that stuff has to do with the facility itself, but as far as for the site stuff, those are concerns of mine that we're taking that out. But is the intent here, if we're not talking the language, right? We're just talking about intent. Is that correct? So we're not saying not to be a CUP or a MUP. We're just talking about shifting those numbers. Is that where everybody's at?
Yes, and I think the hope was when we established these rules that it would prevent us from having hour-long conversations about 25 versus 35 kids, and let staff work it out if that's something we think we can trust them with.
Okay. So
Yeah.
MUP, CUP, that's it's what staff ends up with. Okay.
All right, any other questions? So again, this is an amendment to go from 25 to 35. If this one passes, great. If it doesn't, we go back to 25 and we'll vote on that. If there's no other questions, let's take a vote. All those in favor? This is a motion by Kenny, second by Hempel. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Actually, let me get that one more time. 1, 2,
Wait,
in favor, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, all those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that motion passes 7-5.
So, and we're recording the votes for or against. Is that correct?
Yes.
Just so at least we have record of.
Staff is recording the votes, or someone will be watching this again.
Okay.
Andrew, maybe. Okay, all right, we're back to the original motion. Any questions on the original motion?
Could we restate it, because we're talking, I see Montessori still in the intent, and I'm confused, so I just.
Yeah, so that was going to be, Commissioner Thompson was going to make an amendment to clean that up.
So my amendment would be child care or educational facilities.
As broad as possible, so.
My concern is that there are lots of educational facilities, Montessori, where they don't really have the same break that AISD does in terms of kindergarten starts at this age, and so there's not a distinction between childcare for a 2-year-old and childcare for an 8-year-old.
Okay. Is there a second for that? Second by Commissioner Kenny. All right, questions? Yeah, well, is there a question for staff?
I'd like to know if that language works for staff.
Okay. Yeah, let's hear what the definition in the code is.
Thank you. So just to clarify, school and childcare are separate uses. For schools, we don't have the number issue. It's a different use entirely. For childcare, the definition is the provision of non-medical care and supervision of children under the age of 18. And the breakouts include nursery schools, preschools, daycare centers, et cetera. So it's a pretty broad description of childcare, allowing anything under the legal age of 18. So just for clarification on that.
Yeah, Commissioner, we're asking to change the number for the childcare that's permitted in those zones. So we shouldn't be adding any other educational and so on, is my opinion.
Make a substitute motion
Uh,
or not?
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, you can make a substitute motion.
Substitute motion to change it to childcare facilities.
Okay, just childcare, and
Right,
then
that-
childcare is defined in the code.
And childcare includes the preschool. I mean, that's the thing, yeah.
Is there a second to Commissioner Shea's motion? Commissioner Shaw is a second. Any questions? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries unanimously. Back to the main motion. Are there any questions on the main motion? Main motion is by Kenny, second by, no, it's not by Kenny. It's by it's Commissioner Azar and seconded by Yanis Pulido. That's 7 through 13 minus the duplicates with the two amendments that passed.
I still had questions on some of the other amendments.
Oh, you did?
Me too.
Yeah, we haven't asked questions on them, so I figured they were fair.
Oh, yeah,
game.
yeah. Yeah, they're fair game.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So on number 9, I guess my question is, if you look at the modeling that was done, District 1 and District 9 had the highest number of income restricted units. So are you suggesting we need to go even further? And the reason I ask is the staff goals actually for example, in District 9 were for like a fourth of what they're actually showing will be achieved. So I think there's some misalignment with the housing plan goals and what was actually the outcomes that staff modeled. And then now we're asking for even more. So I just want to clarify, are you asking for even more than what the 1,700 that'll come out of District 1 and the 1,800 assumed to come out of District 9 based on the staff testing?
So I think the point here is essentially that we're trying to increase the overall number of income restricted. So even though we might have met those sub-districts, we have frankly not met our overall income restricted goal. We are way below that. And so we're trying to see what are opportunities for increasing it. And it so happens that this is one place where we can do some of that in a way that seemed more amenable to our group. And that is why we had suggested it. So I hear what you're saying, that this might alter the way the district goals work. But I think this at least seems like a place where we can sort of increase our overall goal. And even though we're challenged to increase that overall goal in other places, geographically, just because of different constraints. So I think that's what the sort of broad intent behind this was, if that helps clarify it.
Okay.
Any other questions, Commissioner Schneider?
On number 10, the internal ADU permitting, this is something that the residential group talked about, and I think there was consensus on this one. So I'm not sure how we want to handle it. We're more detailed. Do you want to pull this one and we can talk about it in more detail?
For my understanding, somebody will have to make a motion to say, can we take this one out?
So I'd move to remove number 10 from this group.
Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Kenny. So this is going to come back with residential, which is on the 5th. Okay. Are there any questions?
Tonight.
Or maybe tonight?
Maybe tonight, yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's right, residential. I'm thinking non-residential. Okay. Any questions? Commissioner Shea, about striking number 10.
No.
Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? All right, go ahead, Commissioner Shea.
Quick question on 13, the off-street parking I'm trying to understand the intent. Is that in addition to accessible parking requirements, or is that, because being that it is elderly care, definitely going to need the accessible, but at the same time, you have people who are going to be helping to care for them, and so you're going to have those. So the accessible is always going to be required. Well, we hope.
This is essentially the base parking table. So if you look in the justification, it says example table 23.3C 3040A. Essentially, all of those tables currently as they exist within the zones. For senior retirement housing, they require 0.8 parking spots per unit.
Okay.
And currently for cooperative housing, and I forget, I think it's group housing currently, the language says 1+1 per every 3 bedrooms. So we're making it matching to what is currently, I forget, if somebody has, I can open it, but essentially for group and for cooperative, we're matching retirement senior to that rather than having 0.8 per unit for it. Does that help clarify the point?
It does, but we're also, your motion is not the wordage anyway. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And
But
so
this will still go forward, so I'm just kind of wanting to understand.
Exactly. And so our intent really, so the language is not part of our motion. The intent really is how to make it more accessible. And one way we saw that we could make it more accessible and take away restrictions was parking, essentially. So we would hope staff can look into that and figure out what makes sense from a reasonable perspective. But to your point, yes, this does not refer to accessible parking.
Thanks.
That was at least not our intention.
Okay, perfect.
Commissioner Azar, can I ask on that intent on number 13? It doesn't say anything about what kind of restrictions. Is that specific enough for you?
So I think this is where we kind of ended up making a mistake. If I'd known that, I should have known better than just to say that we would do the suggested text and the intent. I think it is fine to say reducing restrictions. Hopefully staff will know that our intention was parking was a big piece of that intention, but we're also saying take anything else out of that. That's at least acceptable to me unless one of my working group members want to make an amendment to the base motion.
I would like to make it clear, make an amendment to include parking restrictions.
Is that a motion?
Yes, that's
I'll
a motion.
second it.
So just to be clear, you're inserting the word parking, or?
Yes, to include parking.
Reducing restrictions, including parking.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Shaw, second by Commissioner Azar. Any questions on that? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, any other questions? Okay, if there's no questions, this is for 7 through 13. Commissioner Seeger?
Question, I agree with everything on 7 through 13 except for 11 and 12.
12 is out. 12 is a
10.
duplicate, but 11?
Okay, so we went from 25 to 35.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I would like to vote for everything but that.
You can move to split the question.
I would like to split the question to go from 7 to 10, and then we removed 11, then 12. Was the 10? Oh, that's right, it went to residential. Okay, so that's removed.
So I think
You
you're
can just strike.
moving
You
to
can just strike 11.
To pull 11 out, split the question?
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Shea. Is there questions?
I'm sorry, I have a clarifying question. So, Commissioner Kenny, I'm sorry, did your amendment say that now the language of 35 has been added to our intent for 11?
Yes.
Yes, we're not
Okay.
editing
Just to
suggested
clarify.
text. And so there's a motion to split the question, and if that
Yep.
motion passes but the amendment fails, then we will not bring it up again, and there will not be another planning commission motion to loosen up restrictions on childcare.
Wait, I'm sorry, can you please say that again?
So under our rules, we're only voting on specific things once. We voted on the numbers once already, so that vote is taken and done. Commissioner Seeger's motioning to pull that out. If that motion passes and then we vote on that amendment and number 11 fails, then an amendment on loosening restrictions on childcare is, we're not
So-
taking that up again during
So
our
if somebody
deliberations.
takes something out, then we cannot bring it up again?
Somebody takes something out and then we vote on it and it goes down, it can't be brought up again during our deliberations.
Yeah, okay.
But I would say maybe you could change the number again after we take this vote. Let's see how that goes when we get there. Okay, so we're on 7, 9, and 13. Is that correct? Well, first we're going to take this vote. So motion by Seeger, second by Shea. Or did we already do that? I just did that? I took a vote?
Sure, you need a motion to divide?
Yeah, that's the motion we're voting on, but I just don't know if I took a vote. Okay.
No.
All right, are there any other questions on the motion to remove 11 from this group? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, one more time. All those in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that motion passes 8-4. All right, so 11 is split. Now we're back to the main motion, which is 7, 9, and 13. Is that correct? Motion by Azar, second by Yanis Pulido. Are there any further questions? All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, so that motion passes unanimously. That's 7, 9, and 13. Now we are back to number 11. Same motion makers, Azar and Yanis Pulido. Is that correct? Is that what happens when we split?
I think so.
Okay. All right. So the motion is
It would be whoever sponsored the split. So is that Seeger and?
Seeger and Shea. Is that right, Andrew? Okay, so it's this person that splits it? Okay. All right, so motion by Seeger, second by Shea. Questions? Folks, the motion is encourage accessible childcare by reducing restrictions on childcare facilities for 35 children or fewer in all zoning categories except industrial and airport zones. Are there questions or amendments? So this is where I was thinking we could still amend the number, potentially. Okay, questions? No questions? Okay. All right, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that motion passes 8-4. That was for number 11. Okay, next group. And you have up through 20 is affordability. So are you going the rest of the way?
For all of them together?
I'm asking.
No.
Okay. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, here's where it starts getting actually trickier. But I think we can go through these much faster because I won't make this as confusing. That's partially my fault. So number 14 here, ensure that the smart housing section is aligned with previous planning commission work. This goes forward as an intent. And number 15, which is opportunities for income-restricted housing in zones on the TPN within non-gentrifying areas needs to be maximized. Increased entitlements should be employed to achieve increased number of income-restricted units. This does not apply to naturally occurring affordable housing. This moves forward as an intent. So I have these two together. I'm making a motion to have 14 and 15 intents only moving forward, and these intents moved forward unanimously in our working group.
Okay, 14 and 15. So that's the motion. You have 3 minutes to speak to him. Well, actually, let me get a second. Second by Commissioner Howard. Okay? Go ahead, Commissioner Azar. You have 3 minutes.
I don't think I have much to say except for the fact that at least the intentions were moving forward on all 4 of us agreeing unanimously. The suggested text, as folks read it, I just want to clarify that there was an abstention on both of them. Honestly, partially from not understanding what the smart housing previous exhibits were. So it's really just a question of not knowing what that looks like, and that needs to be shared. And then there was an abstention on the text of 15 as well, just because of not understanding what that would look like. But at least the intents were unanimous, and so I'm putting them together with abstentions on the 2 texts.
Thank you. Questions? Commissioner Kenny?
Can you explain by what the previous planning commission work has been on smart housing that it might align with?
So last in the exhibits that were shared with me, there's the entire smart housing section. There was line edit work that was done. So I think our group essentially was saying that we're carrying forward that work, for which, from my understanding, was done with the commissioners, with community members, and affordable housing workers. So we're moving forward with that intention. We ourselves did not specifically have any additions to the smart housing, but to say the work that was done then, at least we honor that.
And you felt like it was not reflected in the current draft?
I'll be honest, we have not had the time to go match it up. Some things I would say are there, some things I wouldn't say are completely there. So it's not like 100%. But I'll be honest, we have ourselves, if you look at our text is, please just do this, because we ourselves have not had the time to match it.
And I think I'm getting the motion from Steph that they're not super sure how it lines up either right now. But I guess the idea is no harm, no foul if it's already in there. And if not, we went through a whole process and it's going to be included.
That's essentially what we're saying. And the idea really was that we know that a lot of work went into that before, at least I was on here. So we're just honoring that work.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Commissioner Seeger, then Shaw.
I have a question on the wording of TPN. Are you including in the TPN both commercial corridor and not residential non-corridor in your TPN description?
So I will be honest, that is not something that we explicitly had a conversation about. So I would say that we're saying all TPNs.
All TPN, okay, thank you. Would you consider changing it to non-corridor residential excluded? Or just put IA corridor TPN only? Commercial TPN.
So I'll be honest, and I can't speak for my working group.
The motion's been made. It's on the.
Yeah, I mean, his opinion is important, but it's not going to matter.
I guess
We're going to still have to take a vote.
I'll just quickly say, if you want to make an amendment, please do. I just don't feel comfortable speaking for my working group anyways. So if you want to make an amendment, then we can take it out.
Then I would like to make an amendment, a substitute amendment, to clarify that this is TPN IA corridor.
Okay, motion
Which
by
I fully support.
Seeger. Is there a second? Second by Yanis Pulido. Is there questions? Commissioner Azar?
Not a question, but I know we haven't been following it, but we're still allowed to do the for and against, right? Based on our rules?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll wait for the questions to be done and then I'll do it.
Yeah. Commissioner Shaw?
So just make sure I'm clear. This is a transit priority network that also is an Imagine Austin corridor. You're saying it has to be both?
Yes.
Okay.
What I'm trying to do is to exclude the residential non-corridor TPN.
So what about IA corridors that are not transit priority networks? Can those also be included?
Of course, yes, they're not TPN.
Because they don't always coincide. There's IA corridors that are not TPN. So I'm just trying to.
Well, then we're back to what is the TPN and what is it, level 1 or level 2. So if we could, I guess, just put in IA and TPN.
Microphone, please.
Corridors. I am on.
Oh.
Okay, I'll talk louder. I would like the TPN reference, I guess, to be removed and leave it on corridors. Non-residential TPN. I guess it needs to be clarified then. That is my concern.
Okay.
I agree with trying to find more income-restricted affordable housing because we're short. We're absolutely short. But I don't agree with putting these into the residential areas just because there happens to be a bus stop.
So we've got a second to this, right? So I can make a substitute?
Yeah.
So I would offer that
Can't substitute a substitute.
Okay.
No, it's not a substitute, it's just an amendment.
She offered it as a substitute. Amendment.
Yeah, I know, but.
So we're going to call it not really a substitute, so you can do a substitute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So in my okay, I'm gonna.
I'm sorry, quick question on the substitute. Since the substitute was made only for 15, does that mean that the 14 within, but I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand. So 14 is gone?
No, 14 and 15,
Okay.
we're working
so
on
in
together.
your substitute, 14 stays as is and you're expanding 15. Okay, just clarifying that.
Okay. Commissioner Seeger made an amendment to 15. Commissioner Shaw is about to make a substitute to Commissioner Seeger's amendment. Go ahead, Commissioner Shaw.
Yeah, I think so. Let me just. So I'll say we'll say TPNs and I imagine Austin corridors that are not fronted by residential property lots.
We have residential lots on IA corridors today, so I'd be concerned that that would exclude them.
Right. Okay. I'm going to pull back on my substitute.
Okay, so we're back to the main motion. Are there other questions for Commissioner Seeger? Which, remind me again.
Okay.
Where did you land?
I landed on TPN with the exception of non-corridor residential TPN. I think that's the easiest way to clarify it.
I think you said I
I want IA in there. I want Imagine
and that's
Austin
what you
in there.
seconded. Right, so I think your motion that was seconded was IA plus TPN. Has to be both. That's my understanding. Is that what you?
I was
Yeah.
trying,
Commissioner Seeger, could you take that motion back and then have a new motion that is
Makes
closer
sense.
to what you want?
okay. The intent is to exclude non-corridor residential TPN. And
To exclude?
to exclude that, but TPN IA should be included in there. Just to exclude the residential because it happens to have a bus stop on it today. Intense zoning, I think, would be difficult.
Can I just say what I seconded, or what I thought I seconded?
Okay.
Would have been increasing income restricted housing on Imagine Austin TPNs, or Imagine Austin corridors, including TPNs.
Okay, I will go with that. To put in IA.
Well,
I will retract my amendment at this point, because
Okay.
I'm not making my point clear.
thank you. Okay, so we're back to 14 and 15. Questions on 14 and 15?
I'm sorry, can I speak again if there's no question?
No, she
I've retracted it.
there's no motion. So we're back to 14 and 15. Commissioner Azar made the motion. Howard seconded. Any other questions?
Question.
Yes.
On number 15, can you just speak a little to what you're trying to do that's different than what staff proposed? Since there's already an attempt to increase affordable housing with various approaches in the proposed code, what does this do that's different? Is it mostly directed at eliminating gentrifying areas, or is it something else?
So I'll be honest, I think if any of the other folks in my affordability group want to speak up, please do. This was my understanding. I'll speak for my own self. So one of the reasons we have this on here is because some of our high opportunity area TPNs actually are not comparable to our non-high opportunity area TPNs right now in terms of the bonus that is given and in terms of the opportunity for income restricted housing. So that was kind of what we're trying to get at. For example, there are certain TPNs that I think folks within our affordability working group public session, there were people who came and spoke to certain corridors by name, saying that they were not mapped consistently. So I think that's sort of what we're trying to get at. that we do try to increase bonus requirements and then income restricted housing requirements on TPNs, particularly in the high opportunity areas. Does that make sense?
Maybe you could help me out with an example, like a place, a street.
Eric Leak, Neighborhood Housing. We're also trying to make sure that we understand the intent. Is the idea that perhaps we would map zones with higher entitlements along these areas? Like right now, they would have the transition zones of RM and R4. Are you thinking, potentially considering higher intensity zones?
So just to clarify, this is on the TPN only, so this would not speak to the transition zone. This would really be speaking on the corridor itself.
Okay, so the corridor facing property.
Yes, the corridor facing property, not the transition zone.
And so you are thinking something, because I think along some of
So,
the
for example-
TPNs, it just has transition zones. So you're thinking something higher than the transition zone.
Just on that corridor
Just on the
facing
corridor
lot.
facing lot.
So, for example, I think in our committee session, a particular one that had come up was Enfield. Somebody had mentioned how Duval was treated very differently from Enfield and why Enfield was not treated in the same way. Similarly, a conversation that's been had is also on Lake Austin Boulevard and what that looks like. So essentially some of those high opportunity area TPNs, trying to see if there is a way for us to say, and again, broad intent, the idea being, can we try to get more income restricted housing in those areas?
Okay, now I'm confused.
Okay.
Can I have a question?
This is a good question, though, so if staff wants to respond further, we'd love to hear more clarity on why Enfield was done one way or another. Commissioner Schneider, this is still your time, so.
Could you please address that?
So Enfield, Lark Heating, Planning and Zoning. Enfield and Duval are both corridors with a primarily residential facing lots along the corridor. I couldn't speak to the exact depth of transition of either, but I just wanted to clarify, you're saying to increase entitlements on the lot along the corridor through this motion? Okay.
That was at least the intent, and I'll be honest, the reason I think it's hard for us to come up with is because we haven't had the time or the opportunity to go corridor by corridor, zone by zone. We haven't had the time, honestly, to really dig into the maps themselves. But this broadly, the intent is saying, please try to increase opportunities where possible. And if it's already done, that's amazing. Let's pat ourselves on the back and move on. But if there is an opportunity for income restricted housing somewhere left on TPNs, particularly in high opportunity areas, I think that was the intent, that if we can maximize that, that would be great. Or at least explore that opportunity.
Okay.
So I appreciate that general intent to look for opportunities to do that. This seems to be more prescriptive, like do it, and I just don't feel like I fully understand the implications of that.
I would be open if you want to add an amendment saying explore the opportunities for income restricted. I don't think that takes away from the intent that we had. So if that makes you more comfortable.
It does, yes. Could
Do
I so move to add explore to the first, before the first word in number 15?
I will second.
Okay. Commissioner Schneider, Commissioner Seeger, are there questions? So just say a general comment. So the hope is to have the intent where it's broad enough so we're not wordsmithing the intent, right? And this one seems an awful lot like the council direction to begin with. So I don't know, I'm in two minds about it. Questions on the amendment to add the word explore?
I'll just say one thing, and I think you raise a good point that I think largely this was coming from council intent. So we were sort of It was sort of like pushing the intent forward again, bringing it forward in our minds. And I guess that is why it did not have like the word explore or something. And I think it says needs to be maximized, increased entitlements. I guess we weren't thinking necessarily about how prescriptive it was or was not. The idea was really to take forward the council's intent as much as possible. And I think I just want to make one quick comment on the TPN conversation. It becomes really hard on one kind of TPN versus another TPN because in some ways it really speaks to Imagine Austin that as far as I know, there's a few Imagine Austin corridors that go west of Mopac, but in the city center there might even be none. So within the core it might even be none or might be one or two. I think Lake Austin might be one of them. So when we start saying that there's certain corridors that you can pick and on look at in generally speaking, that becomes an issue because we're specifically, I think the intention was high opportunity areas. In some ways we have fewer commercial TPNs, we have fewer Imagine Austin corridors in those areas. And for me, I'm sorry to say, but
I'd like to withdraw my amendment.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll ask a question to staff. So Laura, can I ask you, does this amendment number 15, which is says increased entitlements should be employed to achieve increased number of income restricted units along TPN corridors within non-gentrifying areas, and that's sort of aligned with council direction. Does this mean you're going to try to do something different if this were to pass? Have you already tried to maximize them?
So the only way that I could think, if we're talking about the lots facing the corridors along TPNs, in general, we kept base entitlements the same, and most zones have a bonus entitlement now. And so working within the framework of the draft we have now, we could apply more intense zones in some cases, but that's the only thing that I could think of,
Okay.
which would also change the base entitlements.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Shea, then Shaw.
So the whole point for income restricted housing, I mean, is to continue to increase affordability for the people who live along these corridors. One of the key things about a transit priority network, as it says in the ASMP, is the quality of that TPN. It's about complete communities, mixed use, access, I mean, all those things about that makes it why you would want to live on a TPN. So maybe we should be talking about the quality of that TPN, and if it is, if it truly is a mixed-use, multimodal type supported, that's where we really want the income restricted. If it's just a bus that's passing through a neighborhood, that doesn't do anything for that area if we're trying to maximize the income restricted. In addition, if we get that corridor, if we are to maximize it along those transit-supported TPNs with high capacity, that's where we're going to get our affordable units, because if we could get higher zoning on those that have the bonuses, that's where we'll be able to leverage it. So I feel like, I mean, for me, I think we could start talking to the quality of that TPN versus just all TPN.
Was there a question in there?
So I guess I'm kind of going along the lines with Commissioner Seeger, trying to find some aspect to talk about the quality of the TPN. So I would put a substitute motion to
An amendment, yeah.
an amendment, the opportunities for income restricted housing in zones on a TPN supported with what's the word for high capacity transit.
Isn't transit part of the definition of TPN?
Can I make a request?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to split it, go ahead and split it. But I think what you stated, I just cannot support that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want my 14 to die because I just cannot agree with the amendment that is being made to 15.
Okay. So if we want to go ahead and take care of that, I'm going to make a motion to split, and then we can continue this.
Okay, motion by Shay, second by Kenny, to split 15 out of this package. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Any don't care? Anderson and Howard. Okay, that passes. 10-2.
I'm just saying I'm opposed to this.
Opposed to the splitting? Okay. All right, so that's 10 to 2. Okay, number 14. Motion by Azar. Howard, are there questions on 14? I have a question on 14. It may have already been asked, but we don't know. I don't remember exactly what work we had done.
Nobody does.
You don't remember? Staff doesn't remember. Just to clarify, the motion we're voting on.
I know what work was done. I just don't know how that compares to the new draft. I can definitely share that exhibit again with the entire commission and staff to make sure that the exhibit from last time is clearly in front of everybody.
Okay. Can you give us a summary of what was done? Very broad summary.
I think there were efforts made to ensure that the fees were much more comparable, to try to understand that there was actually a benefit using the smart housing and increasing the affordability aspect. I think there was some conversation around working on the time aspect of the permits again. As Stuart Hirsch has been saying multiple times, when we started off, there was actually expedited permitting that no longer exists, at least in practicality. So there was some work done around that. There was some cleanup work. And I honestly don't remember off the top of my head, but there was some cleanup work that was also done around some of the other requirements that were put into our density bonuses to make sure some of those like hefty affordability requirements were part of smart housing as well. That's my recollection.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, let's take a vote on 14. Motion by Azar, second by Howard. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Okay, one abstaining. So that motion passes 12 to 1. Now to 15. This is Schneider Shea. Or is that Schneider Seeger or Schneider Shea?
I think it was Kenny. Yeah.
Oh, Shea Kenny?
Yeah, just to split it.
Okay, Shea Kenny. Got it. Thank you. All right. Any questions on this? I'll ask a question. I think really what you're asking is, staff, please take another look. Is that what this is?
That is what the base was.
Okay. All right, that's the motion, guys. Staff, please take another look. Any other questions? Commissioner Shea.
So what I was trying to do was create a prioritization because not all TPNs are the same. And I think certain TPNs could definitely take considerably more income restricted and some can't. So if we just come in and say straight TPN, it doesn't create any prioritization. It doesn't give any rules or structure to it. And as we know and we've seen in Connect 2025, there's some TPNs that are going to be completely removed. So the whole intent is we should have a prioritization process of where we put these.
So instead of staff, please take another look, you're saying staff, please take another look at these TPNs, and you're going to make an amendment to say which kinds.
Well, either that or I'm going to just abstain or not vote. So,
okay.
But I guess it's difficult for me because if it's a prioritization, then I could go through 5 different types of TPNs. You have a TPN, you have IA TPN, you have level 2 streets TPN, you have level 3 streets TPN. I mean, there's such a variety to say stick them all exactly the same is not good planning.
Commissioner Kenny?
Point of information question. Does the motion say that all TPNs should be treated equally?
No.
So it says within non-gentrifiers need to be maximized, and that's a concern to say maximized. So it says within increased entitlement should be employed to achieve increased number, which we agree, but it says to be maximized. And the concern I have already in some of the way that we've seen things that have been mapped, I think there needs to be a better prioritization program.
Okay. All right. I don't hear an amendment there, so I'm going to move on with questions. Any other questions? No questions?
Let me see if I'm trying to see if I can craft an amendment.
We should try, Commissioners, just in general, if we're saying staff, please take another look, let's not take 20 minutes to say that.
Or if we want to remove it, if they're already doing it, then so be it. But
I don't have a question, but can I just make a comment on just this conversation? Maybe it doesn't fall within the rules. I just want to say why I have a concern with prioritization. What prioritization does is it prioritizes to say, put it in places that have increased transit, that have essentially more capacity right now, where essentially more people live. What that also translates, at least for me, and I'm speaking only for myself, what that translates is put it in places where there are communities of color, put it in places where low-income people live, put it in places where there's higher poverty, because that is where we put our transit, because that is how structural racism works in this country, in this city. And so here we are, we're saying we're going to prioritize certain neighborhoods over others. And so high opportunity areas, because no high transit line, I don't even know the words in my head, go west of Mopac, well, let's just leave those people out of it, who have been left out of this entire conversation for decades. And meanwhile, the folks who live in East Austin, where they had historical communities of color, well, where are the corridors where we say we have the best transit? Well, let's take up Riverside. And then we just keep on putting more and more there. We are penalizing and hurting people who have already taken in some ways their fair share. And I think this is a conversation around equity and what does that look like for our city, to have an equitable distribution, not just a distribution based on where we think things go according to good planning, based on historical and past injustices.
I have a substitution.
Go ahead.
It's kind of taking what you've done and just, I think, making it, maybe it'll appease folks. So it would go, the opportunities for income-restricted housing in zones on the TPN within non-gentrifying areas need to be increased, need to have increased entitlements to achieve increased number of income-restricted units, especially, I'm adding this, especially in high-opportunity areas. And then goes on, this does not apply to naturally occurring affordable housing. So it removes, it says it needs to be more, but I think it takes away that fear that it's always going to be to the max, the maximum number of lots in.
And I will second that.
Okay, motion by Shaw, second by Azar. Questions?
I just want to make a comment that there's already council directive to consider vulnerable areas. And I think that's a given. I think that's something we all support. So that is also could be part of a prioritization program, whether it's a factor, whether it's a sliding scale based upon it. So I don't think any of us are, not in support of what you stated. So just wanted to mention because it's already inherent in this.
Okay. Other questions?
Just a comment. I guess I feel like from some of the changes that staff's already come back with, that they have already walked back some of the council directive, because I think council directive was to maximize opportunities in high opportunity areas. And beyond that, they even said, look for additional opportunities for missing middle and high opportunity areas beyond the transit priority networks that you've already said. And so I feel like, you've already got the first correction, so to speak, from staff where they've said they're actually going to walk back the transition areas on those TPNs sort of west of Mopac by a block if they didn't have commercial on them. So I don't want to walk back this statement even more because I would like to push staff to move forward with that and not to walk those back.
Are you saying this amendment is walking it back?
I'm saying to water it down further. I don't think this amendment. I think this amendment is saying, hey, let's keep our foot on the gas as we map these areas. But I think to water that down to just say increase instead of maximize is walking it back.
Okay. Commissioner Schneider.
Well, I thought where Commissioner Thompson was going with that was, and ergo, this amendment which says we should increase was a reaction to the revision that staff gave us. I think it does go to your point by saying, okay, staff walked this back. We want to make sure that it's increased.
Commissioner Yanis Pulido.
It's not a question, it's how I feel about this thing. Is that okay?
Go for it.
So I just want to say the whole conversation about structural racism and a lot of that stuff, that's exactly how I feel when we talk about going 5 lots deep on transition zones in gentrifying areas, including a lot of places where people I know personally live, and including on corridors where low-income people currently live. I'm also really concerned about the assumption that increasing entitlements maximizes affordability, because I have not seen a lot of evidence that that's the case, especially when the kinds of increases in income restricted units that we're getting typically with our bonuses are so minimal and are oftentimes less affordable in terms of square footage than what has existed there. And I don't know, Commissioner Nassar, how much of the public hearing you've gotten to watch since you weren't here, but there was a lot shown to us, particularly on Enfield, as a really good example of where we currently have missing middle or existing middle, and where increasing entitlements on those properties is actually potentially going to destroy some of the last affordable housing that we have in high opportunity areas and replace it with sometimes 2 to 4 more units, but all of them being extremely unaffordable in comparison to what was there. That's part of my concern with just blanketly using the language to maximize along some of these streets that are not necessarily Imagine Austin corridors, even if they're TPN. So while I don't disagree with the intention here, I do disagree with the proposed suggestion. I think it leaves a lot of vagueness that's potentially dangerous, because when we say this does not apply to naturally occurring affordable housing, the tracking of that seems to be a little bit shaky. We're hearing that multifamily that's naturally occurring affordable housing has been left off the table, yet we're hearing from community that there's actually proposed upzoning of those areas. And our own lead of housing policy has suggested maybe the zoning process is where you actually get to negotiate what replaces existing housing and how much bang for your buck you actually get by increasing entitlements. You lose that process when you give it by right. So that's my concern with this. Ultimately, talking about it more and going through these nuances as it stands, I'm not particularly in favor of it.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Okay. I'm going to take that as speaking against. Is there another speaking for? Commissioner Kenny?
Just speaking to this language, I think generally tonight it is helpful to us in the process to use words like increase or explore and not be prescriptive about where we are saying things could increase. The fact of the matter is that there are a whole lot of people asking for reductions in transition zones all over town. And if we want the code to at all reach the capacity levels that the first draft did, there's going to need to be trade-offs there, and they're going to have to look for opportunities to relocate maybe transition zones to a more appropriate place. And so I think there is utility in just kind of pointing out where those places could be, and that ultimately those decisions are going to be in council's hands. So I think the more that we can talk about increasing and exploring is generally good for transition zones. It gives staff ideas on where they could relocate things, and also maybe doesn't freak people out because they said, well, Planning Commission just voted to bump to, RM5 on exposition when, were we really saying that? I don't know if we were really saying that, so.
Chair, I'm sorry, one clarification that I want to do. the base motion does not talk about transition zones at all. This is purely on the corridor.
Corridor facing
not-
lots, yep.
Yep, nothing behind, and this does not talk about anything related to naturally occurring affordable housing as has already been defined, so that
Yep.
we would not be talking about that, and it leaves out all the gentrifying areas. I just want to clarify that.
Thank you. Commissioner speaking against? Third commissioner speaking for? All right, let's take a vote. This is Commissioner Shaw's motion, seconded by Commissioner Azar.
So everybody remember what we're voting on? I'm just.
Yeah, could we remind?
Go ahead and
us?
go ahead and repeat it,
Okay.
Commissioner Shaw.
The opportunities for income-restricted housing in zones on the TPN within non-gentrifying areas need to have increased entitlements to achieve increased number of income-restricted units, especially in high-opportunity areas.
This does not apply to, does it keep going?
Oh, and this does not apply to naturally occurring affordable housing.
All right,
Was the word explore, were we saying explore the opportunities? Was,
no explore.
No, the
All right.
floor was taken.
Motion by Shaw, second by Azar. We've repeated the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
For the substitute, or?
Yeah, this is substitute by Shaw, yeah. This is the last motion we're voting on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All those opposed? 2, any abstaining? Okay, 9-2-1, that motion passes. All right. Commissioners, if I can make a suggestion, if it's as simple as staff, please take another look. Let's say that as part of your motion or part of your 3 minutes. Okay, 16, is there another package or just one at a time?
We just vote to substitute it, to amend it, and not.
We haven't
Do we
put the
vote on
base
the
yet.
base, on the motion itself?
No, there's no base.
No, it was, we just voted on the substitute.
That's it.
Okay, we have 3 more packages left. I'll try to make this honestly as quick as possible. I'm making a motion for 16 to enhance affordability and locked in the case of units built under the program, explore options to allow some level of administrative variances for some building form regulations, setback height, building cover, etc. That's just my motion, and then I can speak to it.
Is it intent only?
It's intent only.
Okay, go ahead and speak to it. 3 minutes.
So as I speak to the motion, I just want to say this intent was unanimous. In terms of the detail, we had 1 no, but I think what we were looking at in terms of that was the administrative variances question, which comes verbatim from council direction. So we're taking that forward. And one of the things that we had also mentioned was to allow for affordability unlocked to be used in conjunction with other affordable housing funding and policy programs. So we hope staff will consider that, both the administrative variances and allowing it to be overlapped with other funding and policy programs. And this reflects council's direction verbatim, and we're sending it forward.
Okay, just for the record, Kenny is seconding that. And then I'm going to take questions, and I'm going to try to ask you to ask questions first and then comments for later when we're doing for and against. I'll ask the first question for Commissioner Azar or for staff. I thought Affordably Unlocked already waived all kinds of form regulations. Is there anything left to waive? I don't think there's anything left to waive, but
Eric Leak, Neighborhood Housing. It does allow for a variety of minimizing requirements, but I think there are some that are not minimized to nothing, and so the question would be whether there might be like a 10% variance allowed in some of the areas.
Thank you.
I assume that's what the
Is that your
is.
intent, Commissioner
Yes,
Azar? Okay,
just to
thank you.
allow some flexibility.
Allow flexibility, okay. All right, so staff's clear on what that looks like, some percentage or some sort of buffer. Okay. Any other questions?
When would I make would it be a motion to move this for discussion, combine it with another work group? When would that be done?
Yeah, you can make that now.
So the process working group has a very similar amendment that to accelerate development in transition areas, and I think it would be easy to throw this one in with that process. So I think it would be a good conversation to have all at once if we can remember to do that with the process working group.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Commissioner Seeger. Questions?
So I just have one question, which is if we pull this completely, if I just take it back, we don't even take this motion, can we just bring it up again when we go through process? Exactly as it is. Even my one concern being that I think we were specifically trying to say you should be able to give administrative variances, but only for deeply affordable, not just even for affordable, for deeply affordable. And one way of defining that we did was use affordability unlocked as defining deeply affordable. So I think for us, there's a different conversation to say give administrative variances to market rate or to even our bonus units. And we're saying give administrative variances to deeply affordable, and we just use affordability unlocked as one way of defining it.
Okay. Well, I would be interested to hear someone from the process working group kind of see if they agree or not.
I feel that affordability unlocked is kind of its own special thing, and I would just leave it as affordability unlocked and talk about the other administrative variances and the other ways in the process group.
Okay, is there still a motion or is it dead?
I'll rescind that motion.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
I do have a question on it.
Seeger?
I know that we're going to explore it more. Just saying variances kind of leaves it open-ended, and I have a concern about that. So I'd like to see what process wants to do with an open-ended variance inclusion.
And I think so that's what I'm saying. I can pull this back. I'll pull this down and bring it up verbatim again with whatever y'all
That
come.
motion just failed. So we're
Okay.
doing it. We're doing it now.
Okay.
Did you want to respond to Commissioner Seeger's question?
I guess to be honest, that is not something that we had gone into the in-depth of what those variances would look like. Mm-hmm. We would hope that there wouldn't be something egregious. Staff would take care of making sure that there's flexibility, but they're also in some ways sensitive. I think that was definitely the intent. But I hear what you're saying in terms of limiting it, but that's not a conversation that we had. So I don't know what I can do in this moment.
The first thing that came to mind was like drainage, things like that. And if you leave an open-ended variance, you could run into situations.
I have an inquiry, Chair.
Go ahead.
This intent is identical as number 17. Is this going to be the only one that we see on this?
Yes.
Okay, and as I read it, your amendment explicitly only says building form regulations. It does not talk about drainage or other non-building form regulations.
And again, that language. So where it says, I think it says some level of administrative variances that is from there till the end of etc. is a direct quotation from council direction.
Okay.
And I guess this was our way of saying we're happy with council direction instead of administrative variances, but perhaps they can be used to incentivize deeply affordable.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Speaking against? Speaking for? Let's take a vote. All those in favor of 16, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, 2 opposed. That motion passes 10-2 because we're missing Shaw. All right, 17 was a duplicate. Mm-hmm. We'll go through 18, 19, 20 and then take a break.
So I'm going to use my prerogative as chair to go to 19 first because I think for me it has a direct impact on 18. So I'm going to take 19 first.
Okay.
Making a motion to increase protection. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, folks. There were 2 here. So I'm actually going to. Okay. So we have 3 more motions to go. 19 quickly. I'm making a motion to increase protections for naturally occurring affordable housing in gentrifying areas. That's my motion. Now I'm going to speak to it, which is to say, I think we were just saying that we had a conversation, and one way to do this would be, that we do not give a bonus to any naturally occurring affordable housing within gentrifying areas unless rezoned at a later date. So for this one, I'm really making a motion with the suggested text being a part of the intent. I'm going to say that our intent was unanimous, and then our direction intent had one no on it. I did not do
All
a
right,
good
so
job.
let me clarify that. So suggested language is where you're actually changing the language in the code. So section 1080. This one doesn't look like it's a section that's in the code, so it's really just intent.
And this, yes, and that's what I'm saying. So I'm bringing both of these forward as one single intent.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right. Did you want to add anything else? You still have 2 minutes to speak to it.
I think just to say that in terms of the in-depth intent, we had some disagreement, but broadly everybody agrees to that. So I just put it forward because I think this has a big impact as we move forward in terms of our conversations around gentrifying areas.
Okay, questions? Actually, is there a second? Second by Commissioner Anderson. Questions? Commissioner Shea.
So when you say should not be allowed a bonus, so let's say it was I don't know, let's say it's an apartment complex and the zoning that it was giving, they are going to, let's say they went from an MF3 and they got an RM2. So just without even, I guess just with the direct correlation of the zoning, they'll be able to get more units anyway, right? And so they wouldn't have to take a bonus. I guess, is your intent to force them to have to take a bonus to redevelop? Because they could redevelop and get more units and go right back to market rate.
So I guess I'll just explain this, and I think I completely hear what you're saying, and we have really struggled with this one back and forth, because I'll add one more thing which makes it even more complicated, which is to say, let's say even if they've built up right up to what they're being rezoned to, if compatibility gets waived on them, they might still have an incentive to actually redevelop. We're not sure how to do this. We really want those naturally occurring affordable housing units are not redeveloped. What we're seeing is that we're really struggling to find the tools to make that have teeth. Currently, we've said we haven't rezoned them, but we've still added a bunch of different incentives into your point that would still lead to redevelopment.
So, wait, is that my time?
No, I didn't do it
Okay.
right. Go ahead.
Because it seems like you would want to give them a bonus to, if they were going to redevelop, that, like we had talked about, we had some cases that come up, and it was like we were trying to figure out how many units were actually naturally occurring and what's the new development going to yield. And if the new development is going to be able to capture a good percentage of that, of that naturally occurring affordable units, and then we also get the extra, then that's the opportunity to get them to develop, because then we won't lose a net amount of affordable units. So my concern is that if you don't give them a loud bonus, then they're just going to redevelop to their base zoning, and we lose all affordability. So that's my concern about this. But
I think I hear your concern, and I'll be honest, I think, again, this goes back to the compatibility question. The one way to address that, and I think get to the intent of what we're trying to do, would have been to have zones mapped to current use and not current entitlement. However, I think what we've heard from staff is that would mean you'd have to create 1,000 different zones mapped to each different level, map it one-to-one, which is impossible. So I am open to taking it back to its more broader, but we have to figure out a more deeper way of saying that, we just didn't remap those zones, because it's a naturally occurring affordable housing, and I think to your point, there's pressures on them to redevelop. We're just trying to make sure we really take that incentive away to redevelop. In our ideal world, those naturally occurring affordable housing would not be redeveloped with bonus, without bonus, with affordable units or without, because it's just very hard to get to the exact number of matching affordable units. So we're really saying keep it to the market rate affordable that it is today. We're just struggling to find a way to get to that. So if somebody has if there's smarter minds here who can help us with that, I'm more than open to that.
Okay. I think I got something. Let me think about it.
I have a suggested amendment.
Amendment, are you, go ahead.
So, what were we trying to do? Preserve naturally, or maintain naturally. Well, I don't know if that's the right word. Okay, let me work on the verb there, but because there isn't one here. But regarding naturally occurring affordable housing in gentrifying areas, provide a bonus on the condition that an equivalent number of affordable units with comparable size are provided as are lost in the original development. Something along those lines.
I'm open to that. Can I just have a question for staff? Would that be
After I get a second.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Shea. Okay, go ahead.
Staff, would that be possible, or would that sort of be a calibration one-on-one?
Eric Leak, Neighborhood Housing. I think having that specificity might be difficult. I think we can continue to think about, how do you minimize the incentive for people to just redevelop what is currently market rate affordable housing. I am afraid that if you require too much, then people will just, they will just potentially redevelop under their base entitlements. So that is always the really fine balancing act. But if they go through a rezoning process, then there is sometimes the opportunity for discussion between different groups about what should be provided.
I guess my intent there, also with the language around not just comparable price of those units or rental rates, but also the size, is that I go back to our case on Goodwin, I think in July or early August, when it was sort of celebrated that we got 40 units out of a density bonus on a development that was demolishing 69 existing apartment units. And there was not a conversation about the size of those units. So there was a net loss of 29 units, affordable units, that was sort of considered a victory, when I think in most cities that have better tools in their toolbox would consider that a pretty big loss. But I was particularly troubled by the fact that we weren't actually asking what were the size of these units that were demolished and what are the size of the density bonus affordable units that we're getting. Again, most of the stuff I see in East Austin is like under 500 square feet. So if we're not taking that into account, then we might be losing more than we're gaining.
I'm sorry, Chair. Can I just quickly say one thing? I think.
No, you can't.
Okay.
You're gonna have to ask questions.
My question is: would somebody be willing to put in a substitution that says preserve naturally occurring affordable housing in gentrifying areas, so we go to a broader understanding and just say, staff, please look into this and provide it some teeth? Would somebody be willing to do that?
I have a question.
I have a question.
Okay, so Kenny and then Seeger.
On the motion.
Steph, I want to talk about state law and zoning on affordable housing. It just strikes me as really precarious to put into city policy that a zoning is contingent upon supplying a certain amount of I mean, isn't that exactly what state law says we can't do? Making a zoning change contingent officially in policy, whereas the approach under that was kind of in the original motion was just saying there's no automatic bonus, so there has to be a rezoning that's negotiated. Oftentimes when that happens, there is a process by which affordable units are discussed, but to put into policy that it's contingent upon producing a certain amount of affordable housing as a rezone, strikes me as running afoul of state law.
Is there a question in there?
Yeah, that was my question for the staff.
Okay.
So it starts to sound inclusionary.
Is there still a motion or is it dead?
I thought we had a second.
I'd love to just get staff response, but then I'm willing to withdraw the amended motion.
So Brent Lloyd with the LDC team. So we're not prepared to provide formal legal advice tonight. We have the law department here, but we will look at your amendments and the intent behind them and respond to them in a way. We may reinterpret your amendments as needed to comply with applicable legal requirements, but I think all of your amendments, even if some of the fine points are flawed for legal or other reasons, they convey a message and they convey a clear intention as to what your policy goals are. So I would suggest, in the interest of moving forward, that I think Commissioner Kinney, you raise a good point, but I would suggest not getting hung up on that and just proceeding. There definitely are limits to the city's ability to use affordable incentive bonus tools, and I think you hit on a valid distinction. But we will understand kind of where you're driving and do our best to respond to your amendments in a way that meets all applicable requirements.
Okay, so keep going.
May I attempt a restated amendment?
If you're withdrawing the original, sure.
Withdraw my original and restate, or give a new one.
Okay.
So, ensure naturally,
Regarding
naturally occurring affordable housing in gentrifying areas.
Chair, can I offer
Offer.
an assist? Maybe we can just step back and make this a little more general with an amendment like preserve naturally occurring affordable housing in gentrifying areas.
And I'll
period.
second that.
But that was council direction. I mean, that was already part of the whole guidance.
So can
I
we
guess what I was going to say was to discourage a net loss of affordable units and square footage
I'm good. I'll second
when
that.
granting bonuses.
Okay, seconded by Shay.
How does it read?
I'm sorry, just one clarification. In gentrifying areas, are we saying?
In gentrifying
Okay,
areas.
thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Schneider, do you need it repeated? Commissioner Yanis Pulido, could you repeat that?
Sure. Regarding naturally occurring affordable housing in gentrifying areas, discourage a net loss of affordable units and square footage when granting bonuses or increased entitlements. Is that fair enough?
Yeah.
Chair.
Commissioner Seeger, question?
Motion makers, I'd like to ask for a substitute if they would be willing for that.
No.
Oh, we already have one, so, okay.
You can ask him for an amendment, but you can't substitute.
Can I ask for an amendment? And I fully support the gentrifying areas comment, but we have this going on all over the city. Could we remove gentrifying areas, and it would be a bit different from council directive, but it would apply all over the city in addition to gentrifying? Is that be acceptable to you?
So no, it's going to go to the body. So your motion is to remove gentrifying areas?
Yes.
Is there a second? Second by Yanis Pulido. Questions? Commissioner Seeger, did you want to speak to it?
Well, we especially have this in gentrifying areas, and we need to protect those areas. But I think it also exists in other areas, and a particular area that I drive by very frequently took out 6 very low-cost duplex units and put in these McMansion duplex units, and there was no protection for those very affordable units. And that happens all over the city, not just in East Austin. And I think that if we're really looking at the big picture of planning, that we would want to expand that. However, we need the emphasis on East Austin and gentrifying areas.
Okay. Questions? Commissioner speaking against?
Sure.
Got two.
Speaking against, both of you? Okay, Commissioner Thompson?
So I actually lived in one of those fourplexes on Enfield that we saw the slides of during the public hearing a long time ago. And I think that is exactly the situation that we don't want. I mean, to me, that presentation said this is why we need this draft. 12 units. There were 3 fourplexes on a huge lot. Those 12 units were demolished and replaced with 18 units. So they got 6 extra units, and now they're selling for $1.1 million a piece or something like that. That if we don't provide some bonuses, they're still going to get scraped. A lot of these places are still going to get scraped, and if I do think that East Austin is a special place, because now we're actually talking about removing a community as opposed to just removing some nice affordable housing. It's not going to change the community of Enfield to remove a few affordable units today, and they're going to get removed anyway. But to sort of put fuel on the fire in East Austin, I think it's a special case and needs some special protection.
Speaking for?
Can I? So I actually think this is less to me about including West Austin areas in the intention of preserving affordable housing in gentrifying areas. To me, it speaks more to ensuring affordable housing in high opportunity areas. And that actually, to me, is equally important. I think often gets kind of set to the side. Also will say a lot of communities have been destroyed in East Austin, and a lot of communities have been destroyed on Enfield different ways. But it's not just about community. It's about ensuring there's affordable places for people to live in high opportunity areas. And so to see all of those units demolished and replaced with super expensive units that certainly no low-income people of color are going to be living in, or moderate-income people of any color, I think it's sort of it's a bit dismissive to say that just it's not impacting the community of Enfield just because those are renters. That's a loss of affordable housing stock, and I think that's the intent of including. I mean, I understand if other commissioners may push back on this. I'd rather see this move forward to protect gentrifying areas only than lose the whole thing because we're including all parts of the city. But this is a critical. But at the same time, y'all got to realize everything you're proposing for high opportunity areas is decreasing affordability. All of this upzoning and putting more of the share in Central Austin and West Austin actually, in most cases, makes it less affordable for everybody, with the exception of a few income restricted units, so that are very, very small. So I just want to remind folks of that, because if we're losing affordable rentals anywhere, it's a problem if it's central. And that's why I would entertain the inclusion of other areas besides just those marked in the uprooted study.
Okay. Third commissioner speaking for? Commissioner Kinney?
Those are 4. Can I have an against?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, against.
Yeah, I actually really like the base motion because it is a actionable policy, and I think what we have on the table now has been watered down into pretty much nothing because it's just a statement of values that naturally affordable housing all over the city be preserved. What does that mean? Where are we in this process? What specific policies could come out of that? Where we are in the process is we at least need strategies articulated for staff to be able to act on. Council also gave a bunch of general direction about preserving market affordable rates and increasing affordability, and I don't know that it serves anybody for us to just be up here restating general council direction. The base motion says look at multifamily units, don't give them a bonus if they're market rate affordable. That's something staff can go out and do. It's an edit that they can make to the code. What exactly are we suggesting now? We even took out the word multifamily. out of the motion. So now it's all housing, or are we talking about upzoning? The duplexes that got replaced with McMansion duplexes, that doesn't sound like an upzoning. Most of the affordable housing that we lose and continue to lose in Austin is not upzonings. It's just rebuilds under current entitlements. It's paint and sod flips. I just don't think that this motion really does anything anymore. And so I would urge that we reject the amendment and the substitute and go back to the very, very actionable base motion.
Third commissioner speaking for? Third commissioner speaking against? Are you speaking for?
For, I think
The motion is to remove, well, is this a substitute?
Yes. Well, it was.
There was a substitute motion made that says, if we want
To remove gentrifying areas applied everywhere.
No.
That
The
was taken
substitute
back.
motion is just to protect market rate affordable housing in gentrifying areas, and then the amendment to the substitute is to remove gentrifying, so that the motion, I believe, is just protect affordable market rate affordable housing.
It was to discourage a net loss of affordable units and square footage, but it was. I didn't explicitly say multifamily, but I was still thinking about multifamily in that case.
So this motion was by Giannis and second by Shay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's the motion. Regarding all naturally occurring multifamily affordable housing in gentrifying areas?
Yes, the original.
That was the original.
And in your motion?
In the substitute, and then the amendment.
In the substitute.
That was.
No, we're done with the amendment. Are we still on the amendment?
It hasn't been voted on.
We haven't voted on it yet.
Yeah.
On Seeger's amendment.
Seeger's amendment to the substitute.
Okay, we're on Seeger's amendment. Okay, I see.
Mine
sorry.
was to remove.
I got it. Okay.
gentrifying.
I was on the right
So-
track, and then I got
Okay.
confused. Okay. So this is Seeger-Yana's amendment to remove gentrifying areas, so it applies everywhere.
Yeah.
Are you speaking for that?
Let's calibrate this.
it was not Seegers, it was for Giannis Pulido's comment.
Well, this is Seeger-Yanas.
Okay, just speaking for the comment about not losing the net square footage, I think that's a really important point of, if you're replacing an affordable 3-bedroom with a non-affordable studio, that I think there could be some language that could be strengthened there.
Okay.
But that was on the original motion.
That's the original motion. So this one is an amendment to apply this everywhere.
So then I'll speak in favor because she spoke on that one.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to speak in favor of this because there's a lot of affordable housing that is spread out through the city currently, and if we don't put protections for those naturally occurring ones that are there now, we can stand to lose those, and those would go to the expensive ones that Commissioner Thompson had also talked about. I just think that we need to provide this protection throughout the city because affordable housing is not just an east side problem, it's the whole city problem. If you're going to talk about one side, you got to talk about the other as well.
Okay.
And people need to live affordably throughout the city.
Third commissioner speaking against? Okay, let's take a vote. Okay, this is the amendment by Seeger-Yanas to Yanas Shea to change gentrifying areas to all parts of the city. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All those against? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So that motion passes 9-4. Back to the original motion, which is Yanis Shea. This is regarding all naturally occurring multifamily affordable housing in all areas now because of the amendment. Should discourage a net loss of affordable units and square footage. Is that good? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Questions?
So I mean, just to be.
Questions,
not a
please,
question.
not comments. Questions? Okay. Commissioner, so Yanis, you spoke. Yanis Pulido spoke for. Commissioner Thompson, do you want to speak against? Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, what we're now saying is we're going to remove the affordable bonus program from places throughout the city. So the places, I mean, you know, if we are already seeing affordability, you know, affordable units removed from, you know, the market by being redeveloped at a great rate. The stuff we saw in Enfield, that's happening today. And so, but basically what we're saying is that can continue to happen. We're not going to change any zoning for them, but we're not going to have we're not going to have a bonus program for those units. So those people who built on Enfield, they still can do that. We're not stopping that, but we're not going to let them maybe, instead of building 18 units, build 30 units and have a small number of affordable units there. And I just can't support that.
Okay.
Can I ask, I'm sorry, clarifying question from the motion maker? Motion makers, can we just clarify to say this does not get to anything within that next column, right? So we're not talking about the bonus, we're saying just no net loss in affordable units and area, right? So it doesn't say anything about bonus.
That's correct. I believe we eliminated the language about bonus. And again, if you demolish 18 and you build 30, but 3 are affordable, your net loss could be as many as 15. So that's what this is about.
No back and forth, folks. Sorry. Speaking for, second commissioner speaking for. Second commissioner speaking against.
Are we past any questions?
You can ask a question. Go ahead.
So the Goodwin case was brought up as an example, and that was a VMU case. And yeah, there's 69 there today, but we only have 40 replacing it. Of course, this body had adopted a motion to go to staff saying, hey, make VMU go to 85 feet. That developer, I talked to that developer because we were doing it at that time to say, would you go much taller if you could? The answer was heavens yes. And so we probably could have gotten a bigger number if we had better entitlements. And so is the idea behind this that we simply work the entitlements to the point where we can then meet the number of income restricted units to where it's still feasible, but it just might be a bigger building? So there we're getting a lot of market rate, but then we're getting the same number of income restricted? Or is this just okay, I'd say yes.
I think that the intention is to put it through a process where you actually get to negotiate that and talk about the numbers a little bit more than having it by right.
Or it's just mapped as such from the beginning?
If it's mapped in such a way that you're going to potentially get a net loss, then
it wouldn't
no.
be. That's what I'm saying. Mapped to where it's just a big entitlement to
So,
where the
so
bonus
just
units make it.
you're. I know we don't want to go back and forth, but I'm.
No, if you're responding to his question, you can go.
Yes,
back and forth.
so the Goodwin developer. You're saying if he'd been able to go to 80 feet, he would have provided an additional 29 units of affordable housing, or what was the idea there?
Exactly that. Yeah.
I find that a little hard to believe, but
Yeah, he might have to go to 200 feet.
Yeah, you're going to have to.
Well, so at 60 feet, we're getting the 40. And we're talking about almost 50% more height, and it doesn't seem too much of a stretch. We get 50% more units, but okay.
So then we would require. I guess my question is how would we ensure that those additional units are affordable if our current bonus is only requiring 10%?
Okay, I'm going to keep this moving here. Second commissioner speaking against. Mr. Kinney.
So I just want to be clear that the base motion is a very actionable policy that would result in the protection of affordable multifamily units on the east side. The substitute motion is a vague statement that affordable, existing market rate affordable housing all over town should be protected and that we shouldn't lose any square footage. I really don't understand how we are serving a productive role by declining to do an actionable policy that could be included in the code in exchange for a value statement that we don't have linked to any actual policies.
Okay, commissioner speaking for.
I'll speak for, and I'll just say I think Commissioner Kenny, getting your point, you're right that the base was actionable and I would say in some ways preferable, but I think I was willing and I'm still willing to go to a more broader base just so we don't lose the intention. I hear what you're saying, and I really hope that staff will go and look at that question of bonus and also compatibility and all of that. Please look at this try to make this work as much as we possibly can, but I'm so afraid of losing the intention that I'm fine with going broad. But I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that comment.
Last commissioner speaking against.
I'm supportive of the original, and so if this goes down, hopefully we get a chance to support that.
Okay. All right. That's all the commissioners. Let's take a vote. This is a Yanis Shea motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 3, 4, 5. All those against? 1, 2, 3. Any abstaining?
I'm abstaining.
Okay. So that motion fails. Hempel was 4, 6, 6, 1. Thank you for reminding me, Commissioner Yanis Pulido. All right, we're back to the original motion. Azara Anderson. Questions?
I don't know how to do this. Can somebody clarify my own base motion at this point? Because I'm not sure where we ended up.
Is both of them combined? There's no amendments.
Okay.
Your intent and language.
So it would be both of them combined, moving forward together. Okay.
So I'll ask a question. I know you all said it's actionable, but after the new zones are mapped and they have a bonus that's attached to them, how do you see staff resolving that? I'm just curious about the what you're anticipating.
I would say I think staff might have a better answer to this, but can we have a -X for each zone that has no bonus? I'm going to leave this to staff to say what would be an actionable way of doing this. But essentially, is there a way of making sure that bonus isn't a part of it?
Okay, so more kind of a modification of the zone. Got it.
Chair, can I answer that question?
Sure.
Because I asked that question in one of our sessions is how did staff know if they were applying the right zoning to market rate affordable units? The response was we used CoStar and we got all of that information and we mapped the current affordable housing multifamily, 5 units or more, to what would be an appropriate zone so that the bonuses do not kick in, which I believe that was the second part of the discussion.
Yeah, I don't know. That's confusing to me. Can staff clarify? Is that can we stop the bonus from kicking in if the bonus is built into the zoning?
Right now, the bonuses are built into the zone. So on properties identified as market rate affordable, we maintain their entitlements, which is not always matching up to the land use. And right now, most zones have a bonus. So we don't have a mechanism in this draft to remove the bonus from those zones.
Did you want to respond or a question?
Can I continue this line of questioning?
Well, no, you have to have your own question, but yeah.
Is it not possible to do something like put a CUP process on the granting of zones and on an overlay map and just stick an overlay map on there? Or, I mean, it seems weird, it seems totally feasible to me that you could create some sort of a footnote on the affordable bonus chapter that just says properties that meet X criteria require administrative, council, land use commission, or whatever approval before being able to utilize the bonus entitlements.
Anyone want to take a stab at that? Go ahead.
So I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer it tonight, but just to be clear, you're talking about the use classification of the property in these situations would be a CUP versus permitted by right, permitted?
I'm suggesting and asking for confirmation that it seems like it's feasible to create some sort of process that is essentially a asterisk on the affordable bonuses that says if properties are on a certain list or meet a certain criteria, and we can modify the bonus chapter and say that the bonus is not given automatically, but there's maybe council approval required or something like that.
I think that raises some concerns that we would need to discuss with our law department. And I would caution against going down that road, but it certainly, if it's something that the commission wants us to look at further and get back with you, we can do that. But
Alternatively, you could create a new subzone and remap all
Subzone.
those.
Commissioners, we do have the dash A currently that is kind of a subset to our entitlements, where if you are in the dash A, you aren't entitled to you're not entitled to housing as a land use until unless you do affordable housing as part of that. So we could consider something like the dash X that was proposed, but we would still need to confirm with our law department and just kind of talk through that,
Sure.
because I think
So
that's
to be clear, the question is
complicated.
not, can you do this specific way of doing this, but it seems like there's a conceivable way to skin this cat.
And on that note, I would then encourage you to just couch your amendment in broad and general terms and not get too hung up in the procedural minutia, because I think the devil is in the details, and we understand your overall intent.
Yeah, I think the motion is broad enough. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so we've got a motion by Azar, second by Anderson. It's as written, both the intent and the suggested language to be considered as an intent. And that's what we're voting on. If there's no questions, let's take a vote. Actually, let's do for and against. Commissioner Azar?
So I'm going to quickly say apart from everything that has been said, I'll just say, staff, this is an intention. Please look into it where legally possible and understand it. And also, I think part of our intention is just try to preserve the naturally occurring affordable housing in gentrifying areas. Bonus might be one way that we thought of. If there's other ways, please know that that is also part of this intention. We're not saying just look at this bonus question. We're saying look at all ways possible to preserve it. And we thank you for your efforts.
Okay, against? For? Neutral? Commissioner Shea?
So, I mean, I appreciate the intent, but as I mentioned earlier, I think, my concern is that if this goes forward without the mention of affordability in other areas, then I think we might be losing the message, because I think this has already been stated more or less in the council direction. So I'm going to be abstaining.
Okay. If there's no other questions, let's take a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those opposed? Abstaining? Okay, so that motion carries 11-2. 11-0-2. Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Okay, last one, number 20.
No, we have to go back to 18 after doing 20.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So, because 18 is contingent on 19 and 20. So 20, again, I'm going to move it forward with both so intent and the language, saying that the language is not language per se, but it is intent. So combine both boxes and make it an intent. Ensure the creation of an on-site income-restricted unit in transition areas where feasible. And the way we were looking at this was in transition zones in gentrifying areas, the base zoning should be limited to 2 units per lot with a potential increase to 8 or 10, same as R4 and RM1 now. Any use of the bonus must require at least one on-site income-restricted affordable unit unless the calculation supports more. And this affordable unit must be comparable to the market rate units in all ways, including size. So it's a long one, and now I can speak to it, but that's my motion. I'll just be honest. This one, we were evenly split in our working group, so there were 2 for and 2 against. So take it for what it is, but I think this really helps us move towards ensuring that we have income-restricted housing on site, particularly in gentrifying areas within the transition zones. So now this goes beyond the corridor. Sorry.
Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Kinney. You still have a couple of minutes. Did you want to continue? Okay. Questions? Commissioner Hempel, then Shaw.
My question is about the on-site unit. Can Can we do that with state law?
So yes, this would be only if you're taking the bonus, right? So you would always have the opportunity to go with the base, which is 2 units as it is today. So you could move ahead with that and just keep it to what it is. But if you were to take the bonus, you would be required to do it. So it's an incentive program. Essentially, we're still incentivizing developers to say if you want to take the bonus, you have to do an on-site required unit. Essentially, the idea here is particularly in gentrifying areas, we would then really hope that within transition areas, we do not see a net loss of units because folks are taking bonus but paying a fee in lieu. So the idea being we would encourage folks to either not redevelop and stay what it is today because we're seeing these are gentrifying areas, there's a transition zone, or we would say if you are going to move forward with a redevelopment that it have a on-site required unit. Does that kind of answer your question? So I think this would still be legal because it is still purely an incentive program and is not inclusionary zoning.
Are we doing 18 and 20 together?
No.
No, we're
18 by
doing
itself.
20 alone.
Or 20 and then 18 after
20 alone.
Yes.
Okay.
Commissioner Shaw.
So I have a question for staff. It's an affordability question. So I would like to get your impression here because it looks like it's a good thing. It would actually, I think, would generate 6 to 8 as opposed to the 4, just 4, if I'm reading this right. But then also, so general impressions on this and whether or not it would actually require additional zones or if we can do something with the current R4, RM1 zones to accommodate this special kind of a certain part of town.
It would have to be probably something again like the Dash A, but it would be, something else. So I think it could be accommodated somehow. It does mean that the bonus entitlement would be larger than under the existing R4 and RM1. So there is a bigger incentive there.
So I guess, but in that, I know you've explained this before, but in that area of town, do you think this will actually yield some on-site given the, the land prices there and the other factors?
I mean, the calibration does vary by geography, and there are some places that are currently gentrifying where it may support an on-site affordable unit, and there are probably other places that would not.
And just to clarify from a zoning perspective, we'd probably recommend a new zone instead of a dash, just to keep our zoning string really clean. Probably we would recommend an R2D that was specific to this specific situation. Sorry, just to clarify. Sorry.
Okay, any other questions?
I have a question.
Commissioner Seeger?
I have a question for staff, please.
Third.
Hi.
Is there a specific staff?
Whoever wants to answer the question. It's not difficult, trust me. It's very, I think, benign. But can you limit a zone such as R2D to a specific area or geography of Austin?
I feel like that's actually more of a question for our law department, so I will either let Erica or Brent speak to that.
Erica says take it.
So I'm not going to address it as a legal question, but just from a basic administrative standpoint, you have zones sort of enabled in your code, and then you map them. Mm-hmm. So if you have a zone that's sort of set up in the code, it depends on how it's mapped, where it applies. And you can certainly include statements of intent. You can include statements of purpose that would indicate that it's more appropriate for some areas than others, but it ultimately comes down to the city council's decision as to where to map it.
Is it of course, it will go back to city council to say, is this appropriate to
Right.
zone, have this specific zone?
But we
Okay.
definitely have statements of intent in ours, with each
Okay,
of our
right.
zones, and so you can certainly signal that this zone is appropriate for certain areas in certain
areas like,
contexts.
would we have to reference back to the UT study or any studies, or would it be enough just to say in 2020 identified 20 identified gentrified areas?
I think for your purposes, just say how, whatever works for you, but I think if this is an amendment that goes forward, we would work with the law department to wordsmith it. But the intent, I take it, is to have a zone that's specially intended for these unique situations that you're talking about. So we get where you're coming from, and we would work with your amendment.
Okay, thank you.